5th, 2019 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission to order. Thank you all for being with us this evening. If you have a cell phone with you, please turn it off or put it on mute. Let's begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin our meeting this evening, let us keep in mind those in our community who are facing tough challenges. Let us remember those who are struggling to meet their most basic economic needs, people who sometimes do not have enough food for themselves or their family, or must choose between paying their utility bills or paying for medicine. Let us remember those who are struggling with health concerns for themselves or someone they care about. Let us remember that while we are warm inside, there are many in our community, including children, who do not have a place to call home on cold winter nights. So before we begin our work this evening, let's have a moment of silence for prayer and reflection on what we may do as individuals and together as a community to help and support one another. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And welcome to our February 5th, 2019 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission. I want to announce that we have parking validation and bus passes available for county commission meetings. Anyone who used county parking or transit to attend this meeting can pick up a pass from security on their way out. It will be valid for today only. Let me read the ethics reminder for the board. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by this board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda the outcome of which would have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? Seeing none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on all matters that the commission votes on at the meeting this evening. Okay, we come to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda and to follow the remainder of the agenda as published?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. We have 3 public hearings. And Brandon Freeman will present the first one. It's a resolution authorizing refund of overpayment of taxes.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a request from the Brock Law Firm. I believe the information was in the packet. Is that correct, Lamar? Okay, I have no new information to add other than this was a deed that was erroneously filed in Buncombe County. I believe it should have been filed in Henderson County. It has now been filed in the proper place, and I believe the number, which I don't have in front of me, is around $400. That has now been paid to Henderson County, and I would see no problem with refunding it to the Brock Law Firm. If anyone's here from the Brock Law Firm to add anything else. Doesn't look like it.
All right. I'll open the public hearing at 5:10. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? I'll close the public hearing at 5:11. Thank you, Brandon. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up, we have two economic development agreements. The first is with Burial Beer Company, and Tim Love will present this item.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. This evening, we're here to present an economic development agreement to you related to Burial Beer Company. With me, I have one of the co-founders of Burial Brewing with me, Jessica Reiser. In your packet, you have a number of documents. Those documents include a memo from myself and George Wood supporting this recommendation to move forward with the economic development agreement. In addition, there is a resolution in your packet as well as a draft economic development agreement that outlines the terms of the incentive as well as the performance commitment for Burial Brewing Company. With that said, to facilitate today's discussion, I'd like to walk us through a few slides. I'll lead us off, but then I'll turn it over to Jess for a brief minute to give you more on the overall project. So in terms of background and request, as announced on January 6, 2016, Burial Beer Company, which I'm going to refer to as Burial, has chosen Buncombe County for its expansion effort in North Carolina. Burial plans to expand their existing facility, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps, which is located off of London and Shady Oak Road. This is an old facility built in the 1900s that's been vacant for a number of years. For those that do not know, Burial is a manufacturer of craft beverages and has been so since 2013. Today's request is fairly simple. We're asking for your approval for the economic development incentives, and in addition, approval of the economic development agreement that outlines those incentives. In terms of our project overview, I'll now ask Jess to step up and walk us through sort of the plans for the project and
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. Before I dive into where we're at, as I stand here right now, I'd like to kind of bring us back to 2012, where my husband, best friend, one-year-old, and I moved cross-country to come to Asheville to open and fulfill our dreams of owning a brewery. And so we chose Asheville for a number of reasons, one of them being the supportive community that we definitely feel like has fulfilled and helped us along the way. So we thank you for that. We started as a one-barrel system, which is just 2 kegs per batch. We were only open 2 days a week at our South Slope tap room, and it was just the 3 of us who ran the business for about a year and a half. And then we expanded to a 10-barrel system, which is the system that you see today at our tap room, and we started hiring employees. So we went from 0, and now we have 45. Since the expansion, we've hired 21 of those 45 people. And so about 3 years ago, we stumbled upon this really magnificent property, which is located close to Biltmore Village off of Shady Oak Drive. And it was built in the early 1900s and was owned by the federal government for quite a while. As Tim mentioned, it was home to the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was FDR's New Deal program during the Great Depression, where he loved the National Parks program. So folks who lived and worked on that property were also working on the Blue Ridge Parkway. So it has a very special place in Asheville and U.S. history. So since we purchased the property, it's 2 acres with 6 buildings, so it's quite an undertaking. Right now we brew there. So one of the buildings of the 6 is our production facility. We started brewing there about 2 years ago, and now we are able to expand our distribution to all of North Carolina, New York City, and Georgia. We also have a sour barrel house on the property, which houses about 300 barrels of aging beer, 2 storage buildings, and 1 administrative office. And the final piece of the puzzle, which you see up on the slide, is Forester Camp Bar and Restaurant, which is slated to open in spring. So that is where we're at. We're under construction there. We're getting so close to being able to open that property up to the public for people to really be able to see a piece of Asheville's history. So we thank you so much for the support, and really couldn't have done it without you guys. So.
Thank you, Jess. So in terms of details, as you can see on the slide, we're looking at 17 new jobs, approximately $1.8 million in capital investment, and an average wage of $16.34. These were our projected numbers in 2016 based on the announcement. Burial has exceeded a number of those numbers. One that I would point to as well, the $16.34, that does exceed our living wage targets that have been published by Just Economics for this current fiscal year. Shifting gears a little bit to give you an idea of the schedule, the investments and the jobs, the cumulative amount, how do we get to the totals at the end of the year? So by the end of 2019, we'll have $1.8 million invested, about 17 new jobs. That's the schedule to get there. In terms of the incentive that we've proposed that you approved today, I just want to clarify this is a joint economic development effort. And when I say that, I'm talking about the City of Asheville, who has an economic development agreement with Burial in place. I also want to mention the EDC, who is here with us today, who's supported us throughout this project and sort of the recruitment and expansion efforts. And then, of course, Buncombe County. The total incentive we're talking about, this is a total amount. It's not an annual amount. Is $10,000. And you can see the disbursement schedule on the table that's in front of you. The basic idea here is pay for performance. So after commitments have been met on jobs, investment, and average wage, Burial will be asked to submit a confirmation request, which would request funding. So what I'm saying is no funding until those commitments have been achieved. In terms of the impact, we've already talked about the 17 jobs and the $1.8 million. What that means to us from a tax revenue standpoint is approximately $54,000 after we net out the incentive amount. In addition, I want to point out the $1.3 million approximate in labor impact. And so this is an economic impact analysis that we get from the EDC, our partners in economic development. And this is based on sort of payroll amounts that aren't factored into the analysis that I presented to you about your net $54,000 in tax revenue. With that, if there's any questions, we'll take those now.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and hold the public hearing? Open the public hearing at 5:17. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the proposal? Mr. Yelton?
If I heard correctly, they're not going to ask for the credit until they reach the goal. And if that be true, I think this company has just given you all the criteria for your economic development for the future. I really think that's great. I would also make the comment, since this building is the Civil Conservation Corps, the CC camps were very prevalent in this area. Your Barnersville Community Center was an old one. And those folks came here and planted pine trees on a lot of old red hills out through Jupiter. They also built something called an outhouse because people were going to the bathroom in the woods. And I think if you could look into the history of the CCC and put that inside that place, that would be phenomenal and might wake up some of the younger people, what us old mountain folks had to do. Because I can tell you, when you go to an outhouse in the wintertime and you stand up, you can see where you've been sitting in the frost. And I've done that, and that's no fun at all. Also, I would like to address the fact that we have about as many breweries now as Portland, Oregon. And the French Broad River does not have the volume of the river in Portland. So you've got to manage your waste, because the waste from breweries is one of the highest, most concentrated waste that you can have. So they'll be working, I'm sure, with our waste treatment plant, because even your larger breweries have to sometimes release their waste on a timed basis to keep from destroying MSD on the river. So those are just some real comments, and I think please take advantage of that CCC connection. Thank you very much.
All right, anyone else? All right, I'll close the public hearing at 5:19. Commission, any questions or a motion? Oh, and for clarification, we need two motions. So there's a resolution and then there's the actual incentive agreement. So two motions. So is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved. Second.
Further discussion?
I just have a comment. This is no reflection on the individuals that run the bureau. You say it. Say it for me.
Brewery.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate your contribution to the community, but I'll be voting no, as I don't support incentives to the beer and alcohol industry. So.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the incentive agreement?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
All right, thank you for being with us. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
All right, Tim, I think you've got another one, right? Sure, no problem.
What's Hawk on there?
The Canadians.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For our second public hearing on economic development this evening, we'll be presenting Hawk-On Industries, who I'm going to ask to join me at the front at this point. As with the package that we presented earlier today, we will use a slide deck to get through the materials, but know that in your packet you have a resolution as well as a memo
Yeah.
and an economic development agreement that's in a draft format. So getting started, today I'll lead us again, and then Desiree McGee will present as well. In terms of background and request, Hawk-On Industries announced on September 21st of 2018 to choose Buncombe County as its location in the southeast. Hawk-On has a number of facilities in Canada as well as the western part of the country. Hawk-On's intentions are to build a 140,000 square foot facility in Enka Commerce Park. And Hawk-On is a manufacturer of custom HVAC units. When I say custom, these are units to support labs, hospitals, large facilities, not our homes. Today's request is to approve both the economic development agreement and the incentives as discussed. At this point, I'll turn it over to Desiree, who will present on the project as a whole.
Thanks, Tim. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Desiree McGee, and I'm the Director of Operations for Hawk-On Industries. First of all, I'd like to thank the Buncombe County Commissioners and Tim Love, the Buncombe County Economic Development Coalition, specifically Clark Duncan, and AB Tech for helping us choose Buncombe County and Enka Commerce Park as the home for our newest manufacturing facility. We're very excited to become members of the Asheville community. We recently closed on the property in Enka in late 2018 and hope to start the building process in the fall of 2019. Through partnership with AB Tech, we hope to recruit and train employees to fill 100 positions within 5 years of being operational at an average wage of $19.20 an hour. Through these first 5 years, we expect to invest $17.9 million in capital. Our corporate culture is very much driven by our employees. And as such, aside from competitive wages, we also pay 100% of employee health and dental premiums and 75% of spousal and dependent premiums. We also offer matching 401k programs and believe strongly in continuous training for our employees. Once again, I want to thank Buncombe County for all their support in helping us make Asheville our new home. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just to quickly summarize, as Desiree said, in our agreement, we're looking at approximately 100 new jobs, $17.9 million in capital investment, an average wage of $19.20 an hour. Again, all 100 jobs exceed the threshold for a living wage in Buncombe County. I would also add that that living wage does not factor in health insurance, and as Desiree indicated, 100% and 75% of health insurance and benefits are covered for spouses and dependents. In terms of the investment and job overview, this is the schedule that we're looking at. So you can see incremental growth. In 2019 and 20, we're seeing the majority of the capital investment. So $700,000 in year one, 16.7 year two. So that's the construction of the facility. In terms of the job growth, you can see, again, incremental. So between 14 and 20 jobs per year throughout 2024. One thing I would note, in discussions with Desiree and this economic development agreement, we opted to go for a more conservative job target. I think Hawk-On's plans are to exceed the 100 job number, but wanted to make sure that we were sort of delivering on what we said. In terms of the incentive, again, a joint economic development effort. Lots of players involved in this one. So the Department of Commerce, who provided customized training grants through AB Tech. AB Tech, again, working on a customized training program with us. The Department of Transportation, we've been in discussions that I know you're aware of related to industrial road access funding. Of course, the Economic Development Coalition, who's with us again today, Clark Duncan, April Brown, and then the county. Our total incentive is $192,000, 298 cents. Again, this is a cumulative total. This is not a annual amount that they will be receiving. The incentive disbursement schedule is presented below. So the total incentive was derived based on the formula that we use in our policy. The way that we've set up the disbursement schedule is slightly different, but again, a pay-for-performance model. So in 2024, assuming Hakon can deliver on their separate goals for capital investment as well as jobs, they will receive $192,000. That's prorated across the capital and the jobs. Does that make sense?
So, question, I'm seeing 96,000,
That's correct.
not 192?
That, is my math off? Is that what I'm catching here?
Yeah. So they'd receive 192,000 over the 5 years. I understand that just comes in as the jobs come in and you meet the parameters. So do you think that's in the fourth and fifth year that the monies come in, or will 192 come in at the end?
The plan, go ahead.
In your memo, it shows, Joe, the
Yeah.
incentives would be $38,459.60 each year,
Okay.
and that for 5 years, and that adds up to the 192, 298. During that same time, we would have tax revenue of $342,342. So the net impact to the county would be a positive $150,044.35.
Yeah, and thanks for that information. I knew we had a positive in there, so I didn't have a problem with the incentive. I just wanted to make sure that the slide was accurate for the public, that they got that information, $38,000 a year, basically. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, but what does that slide mean?
I don't know.
This is just our disbursement schedule. So the actual amount of the disbursement would occur after all job targets and all capital investment had been hit. So we're, again, a pay-for-performance model. So once targets are hit, disbursement can occur, but not prior to then.
Okay, but let's assume that the job targets are hit annually. They'll be paid $38,000 a year?
They will not.
Okay. I'm still not quite there. What would they be paid in year one if they hit their targets?
$0.
In year two?
$0.
Okay. And then 2024, they'd be paid?
Assuming they hit all targets, the total payment would be $192,298
Okay.
So you're paying it at the end.
at the end.
Oh, okay, well, that's not what this chart showed, but that's okay, that's better.
So, but I'm assuming we're going to accrue that money annually. That may be where that number is, but
And where does the $96,000 figure come from?
That's 50% of the total incentive. So 192,298 divided by 2.
So I think you read horizontally.
what?
So half the incentive is for investment, half is for jobs?
Correct.
I'm with you.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
There it is.
All right.
Holy cow.
We'll get there one day.
Now it adds up.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks for
Lord.
talking us through that. Jasmine had it like
Good-
a long
good
time ago,
catch.
but now we're all there.
Sleep
Okay.
deprivation allows you to
That's
to the
something,
matrix
I
of
don't-
mathematics.
Good deal. Thank you. Any other questions on that incentive? That is an important part of this, so I want to make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Good deal. In terms of overall impact, we've talked about the 100 jobs, the $17.9 million in investment. When we look at this over a 10-year span, we're looking in taking in $750K in property tax. When you net that against the incentive, we're looking at about $555,000 in the positive. In addition to that, we're talking about a labor impact of approximately $7 million, which you can see in the chart. And again, this is provided by our partners at the Economic Development Coalition, who are looking at the indirect as well as induced impact of this company in our community. And so that total impact would be about 168 jobs, approximately $6.9 million in indirect, induced, and direct impact. With that said, are there any questions?
All right, let's do the public hearing on this item as well. Open the public hearing at 5:31. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the proposal? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing at 5:32
I'll move approval.
of the resolution.
Second.
Yes. Of the resolution, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the resolution for this economic incentive project. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we need a second motion to approve the incentive agreement.
So moved. Second?
Have a comment?
Yes.
So I do want to mention, well, there's a lot of people that made this happen, but Tim Love, others, the MPO, NCDOT, the $1.3 million grant, and for the benefit of the press, the bridge that people wondered what it would connect to, it's no longer the bridge to nowhere, it is now the bridge to Hakon. So, may have been built a little soon, but we had a lot of faith in the fact that there was going to be some great businesses as well as other things back there. So I thank y'all for your timing and coming and doing that, and I thank, for the hard work and, the grant and being able to connect to 100 jobs there is a big deal. But I wanted to thank all of those that worked hard on that grant. We appreciated it very much.
If I could comment.
Sure.
Actually, that's an important point because we would not have been able to locate there without that bridge. The product that we build is large. We're the people, unfortunately, that might shut down your freeway with the pilot cars. And so getting the equipment we build out of our facility and down the road, that bridge and the road to that bridge is very important to us. So
Yeah, and being close to I-40 there, I'm sure all that came in. So, all that worked together, and I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful. Thank you.
All right, I'll just echo, it's a really exciting project. We're glad you picked Buncombe County, and it sounds like it's going to be a great addition to our community. So thank you for considering us carefully and making Buncombe County your home. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, Tim. Thank you. All right, let's keep going. There's no,
I got a couple.
okay, go ahead, George.
One we'd like to do is call for a public hearing. Our planning board has been looking at, as y'all know, different ways to make sure that we're doing everything we can on affordable housing. Yeah, it's on. And one of the things they've been looking at is whether or not to allow manufactured housing in some more zoning districts. They have that proposal to you. It's from the planning board. And Nate Pennington is asking that you set a public hearing for the 19th so that we can move forward with that proposal. So we would ask that you add that and vote on the public hearing.
Are you asking us to add it to the agenda tonight for that meeting, to schedule the public hearing?
Yeah, schedule it tonight so we can hold it on the 19th, because it takes 2 weeks to advertise it.
Do we need to formally vote to schedule that public hearing, or can we just do that in the regular course of business?
I think you ought to vote on it, to call it.
Okay.
So
I don't doubt that there's support for doing it. My only question is just
whether it needs to
adding this to the agenda now to vote on it is something that it's a little bit, we probably should have added it at the beginning. But if there's
So-
consensus, I'd be open to, adding it now.
Can we do that?
And what was the date you wanted to do it, George?
19th.
The 19th of February,
Oh, so for the next meeting.
the next meeting.
It's 2 weeks.
Can I add that this is above and beyond our legal process? The reason we are requesting an official call for a public hearing is as we made our way through the planning board, There wasn't a lot of folks that showed up we did a number of discussions and we did the public hearing. The planning board advanced the item on a 6-2 vote, so it was approved, but we're simply asking tonight that we officially set a public hearing date to move it to you guys so that we could get more attention to the matter out to the public as well.
Okay, but just so I'm clear, the county commission has to vote to have this public hearing happen.
We do not. This is basically a way for us to get more attention to this public hearing because it's a text amendment, it's not a map amendment, so we don't capture the audience that we typically would because it's
Okay.
not tied to a specific property.
I don't think we
It's tied to.
This is a public hearing just to encourage public input, not like this resolution on the refund of the taxes. That is a insignificant matter, but we were required to have a public hearing on
You're
it. This is
required
just to
on that.
encourage public input.
Not required
Okay.
here. I just think it's good form for the board to vote on a public hearing, but it's not required.
I have a question
Can we just
for Nate.
Add it.
Yes.
Why don't,
Are you presenting the text amendment at the time of the hearing?
Yes, we will be.
Well, then they have to have a public hearing.
Well, they will have a public hearing. All we're doing tonight is just asking that it be placed on a formal agenda. We could either do that in the second meeting in February, or if you choose to set a public hearing for the first meeting in March.
I'm really confused.
My intent was that you would schedule the public hearing tonight. We'd advertise it, you'd hold a public hearing on the 19th and vote on it and be done with it
In one meeting?
in one meeting.
So, when will we see the text amendment?
You will see it at the public hearing that you set.
Okay,
So it would be on your next agenda, Joe.
okay. I mean, it's,
You know, let's just put it on the agenda. Why don't we just say we'll take public comment on it, whether we're prepared to vote in it or not that night, we'll kind of see once we're there, I guess. You know, 'cause we haven't had a discussion on it yet, so I don't know if people will be ready that night, or we might take some more time. But anybody have any objections about having it on the agenda? With the intention that we can take public comment on it?
okay, so what's the difference in doing what the chairman said and all of us have said at least once, and doing what you're saying?
I think we're saying the same thing.
I think we are. I think all I'm saying is, may we please advance this item to you at your next public hearing?
Well, you know you're going to get a big amen from me. Yeah, we've been waiting for this for years,
Just like to
so
bring a
it'd be-
little more exposure to it and tell the public tonight that we're planning on advancing this text amendment, just because we didn't get a lot of input at the planning board, and it does affect the zoning ordinance. It changes the permitted use table. It does a number of things, so that's what we're asking.
I just
Put
want
it
to
on
be
the
clear
agenda.
with Ms. Hockaday, if the public hearing is required, does the board have to vote to call the public hearing or not?
They have to vote to call a public hearing.
Okay, so that's the difference. If you want to vote on it on the 19th, you need to vote to call the public hearing tonight. If not, we'll delay it for 2 weeks, bring it back, add it to your agenda, and you can vote to call the public hearing, and then we'll do it in March.
Just based on where we're at in the meeting, I would suggest that we have a initial discussion of the issue, and we'll be happy to take public comment on it, but plan on having voting at that meeting to then establish the formal public hearing to then vote on the matter.
Okay, so you want a motion at the next meeting to call the public hearing?
I think that's probably the way we should do it if we want to just stick to our process. Yeah.
And it'll be on the agenda the 19th?
As a discussion item.
On the
Yeah, we'll have the
19th, you'll
discussion.
call the public hearing, and then the first meeting in March,
Okay.
you'll hold the public hearing.
So the only,
But here's what I'm saying. Why don't we actually just go ahead and discuss the issue that night?
vote on it.
And, well, no, 'cause
Discuss
we have
it.
to have a public hearing, which,
So that's kind of, so anything we get from planning where it says it's a 6-2 vote, then we usually vote on that unless somebody pushes it out, right?
That's right. I typically would say it's a rezoning. Simply
Yeah.
hold the planning board meeting, and then it gets advanced to your next agenda. Because this one was a text amendment, and it does a number of things, and it's not one property specific, we thought this was a good way to just say, hey, we'd like to bring this to you at your next meeting. Are you okay with just setting a public hearing date as we normally would? And are you okay with that for the second meeting in February?
Well, here's what I'll say. See, part of the problem here is that this is not on the agenda. This is just a report. So I'm kind of reluctant to bring anything to a vote right now. You guys have heard some feedback. Do with it what you think makes sense. And but I don't think we can do anything else other than share the thoughts that we've shared.
Because we should have done that. We should have put it on by consensus earlier if we was going to do this, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's the issue. So it's really a moot point. I don't think we can do anything, Chairman. Is that right? Other than put it on the agenda next time?
I think that's right.
So is everybody seems to be okay with that?
Seems like
Yeah, I think you're right. So.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Good. Look forward to the discussion. All right.
The only other thing I wanted to comment on is obviously the budget is underway. We're working very hard on the capital improvements program part of it. And then once Mrs. Pender's on board, then they'll start holding meetings with the department heads. But we felt like she ought to hear all of that because she'll be putting the budget together.
Excellent. Okay, next up, under new business, we have a resolution setting the compensation in terms of the Office of Board of Equalization and Review, and Keith Miller, the tax assessor, will present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. What I have for you tonight is the resolution setting the compensation in terms of the Office of the Board of Equalization and Review. Let me quickly just say, what is the Board of Equalization and Review? A lot of people have never been to that level and don't know what that is. So that is a 5-member board that comes from the public. They sit at your pleasure. A lot of counties have their own Board of Commissioners that sit as their Board of Equalization and Review. But this board was established back in 1985 to sit and hear appeals for tax-related purposes. So that's what that board does. The North Carolina General Statute states that the Commissioner shall fix the compensation and any allowances for that board. In February '99, the board set the compensation to be $75 per session. I am requesting tonight in this resolution that you change that from $75 to $100 per session. The Board of ENR consists originally of 5 members appointed staggered through the term. We got off from that some time back where we were appointing all 5 members yearly. Now, what I'm asking you tonight in this resolution is let's go back to the staggered terms in order to be able to preserve members who are qualified that don't all come off at the same time. So that staggered terms would look like 1 member for 1-year term, 2 members for a 2-year term, and 2 members for a 3-year term. Again, that's to try and preserve the qualifications and having a professional board to be able to hear the appeals for the citizens of Buncombe County. Also, I have for you tonight 2 new members to that board. I think you have those documents. I'm asking you also to consider these 2 new members to be appointed. That would be Philip Price, Attorney Philip Price, asking for Mr. Price to be appointed to a 3-year term. And also, I have for you Thomas Battle, who will also ask to be appointed to a 1-year term. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions related to those 2 applications or to the resolution in general.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval. Yeah, do we have to do it that way?
They're in the resolution, so if we approve the resolution, it'll be accomplished. So is that a second, Mr. Fryer? Is it a second to the motion?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, all right. We've got a motion and a second to the resolution, which includes the appointment of the members. Any members of the public who wish to comment on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, next up, there's 2 items related to affordable housing. One is sort of high-level process related to consideration of affordable housing issues, and the other is specifically regarding the Mountain Housing East Haven project. Mr. Wood, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you. If we could go ahead and put up the one slide that we have. Thank you. You had asked me at the January 15th meeting to do two things. One was to review and make a recommendation on Mountain Housing Opportunities East Haven request, and number two, to develop a better process for reviewing and funding major affordable housing projects. The memo that I've given you addresses both of these issues. I'm not going to go through the entire memo, but a large portion of it is a lot of detailed information on what we have done in the past and what our programs are. Several of you had asked how many open programs did we already have as far as funding for different agencies. So all of that is in there. But if you go to page 6, this starts with the recommendations. What you have is a request from Mountain Housing Opportunity for a loan for 20 years at 0 interest for $2.2 million. What I've done on the chart that's up on the board is I've compared that to the recommendation that the staff is making to you on that. And our staff recommendation is different from that. And what we're looking at is to do a $2.2 million loan, but it would not be waiting for a balloon payment at the end of 20 years, which is what they're requesting. What we're proposing is that they pay an equal amount of principal over those 20 years, which in this case would be $110,000 a year. We're also proposing that they pay 2.25% interest, because that's the amount of interest we can make if this money was invested in our investment accounts. Also, the money would not be paid out until the project was completed, which is identical to how we did with Eagle Market, which we did for them last year. So basically, with all of that, what I want to call your attention to on the chart is one of your 6 goals is to do as much public housing as quickly as possible. So what we're proposing to you, if they repay it every year, like we're proposing there, you can look at the third column is the first project. This is Mountain Housing, and that would be, if you did that, if they paid it off at $110,000 a year, you would be getting $110,000 every year. What I'm showing there is that after 5 years, that would be $550,000 has been repaid to you. You could then, by calling this a revolving loan fund, you then can put that with other monies you have to start a second affordable housing project. 5 years later, you would have collected 110,000 times 5, which is 550,000, plus the second project would have thrown off another $500,000 from repayments there, and then you'd be able to reinvest $1,050,000 into another project. 5 years later, you would then have earnings off of both of those 3 projects, and those would be $1,550,000. And then 5 years later, you'd be ready to start on another project. So what I'm showing you on that chart on the yellow line is what's the difference? The difference is if you do what Mountain Housing is requesting, the only project you will be able to do in that 20-year period with that money is their project, and you'll get your $2.2 million back, okay? If you go with what the staff is proposing, you could start 3 other projects and you would have put $5.2 million to work on affordable housing, which is dispersing that money, getting that money back out, building more affordable housing, $3 million more over the same lifespan of that 20 years. So the way we view it, this is a far better alternative. And this is also what we're proposing to go forward with on a new process, which I'll get into later. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if you're okay with it, these are 2 issues. So I thought, or do you want me to explain both issues before you vote?
Why don't we just address the mountain housing
Okay,
project first, and then we'll talk about the process going forward
okay.
after we've resolved that.
So our proposal to you is that the terms would be different. What we would propose is that we enter into a 20-year loan agreement with Mountain Housing with documents and agreements similar to those used on the Eagle Market project, such as a promissory note, deed of trust, and other agreements. The loan would be at 2.25% annual interest, which is comparable to what we could earn on this money if it remained invested. The repayment schedule would be structured like our bond issues, which is interest payments every 6 months and a principal payment once a year. The principal amount would be level payments over 20 years, which at $2,200,000 would be $110,000 annually. The first year's interest would be $44,000, then decrease by $2,200 per year. This reduces our risk in the event of a default, and I want to talk about that. We would be fifth in line on these liens on this project, and so you basically don't have a lot of collateral on this, and that's another reason for reducing your risk by having them pay down the loan and not wait 20 years on it. And more importantly, it provides you with additional funds that can be used to fund additional affordable housing projects. And that's what I just went over with you on the chart. So Buncombe County would provide the $2.2 million to Mountain Housing Opportunity once the project was completed. That means that our inspections department would have issued a permanent, not a temporary, certificate of occupancy for the entire project. All amenities and landscaping would have been installed, and the development, I got to get the other page. That's it. And the development, the units would have already been occupied. This is how Eagle Market was done, so there's nothing different in this regard. We paid the money out on Eagle Market after the project was completed. It also means that this would not impact the current fiscal year's budget because their project schedule calls for them to start in March and be finished in October of 20. So that would be 4 months into our, not this budget year, but well into the next one. Actually, it'd be the one after that, excuse me. So also the documents would contain a provision, as in the Eagle Market project, that the property would be and remain taxable for property tax purposes. So that's the provisions we're recommending that you make the loan under. And as you can see, a lot of those are similar to what we did on Eagle Market. What's not the same is you did do a balloon payment on Eagle Market. And we just don't think that puts the money back to work as quickly as we should. So that's our proposal to you.
So, Mr. Wood, let me ask you a question. You know, the idea of getting funds back, I mean, the need for affordable housing is very large. We need a lot of projects to happen, but we also need this project to happen. And, you know, my concern is that based on everything I've seen about the pro forma for this project, it simply cannot support repayment of the loan on these terms. This is a deeply affordable project, not an 80% affordability or home ownership. This is, and that's the great thing about it. It's 95 units that are deeply affordable. So helping people who really have the need the most. And I mean, everything I understand about this is that if we required them to repay the loan in these terms, the project would have $100,000 a year of negative cash flow, which means, of course, it wouldn't happen. So I like it in concept, but I just don't think it works for this particular project because of the deep levels of affordability that it would offer.
Well, my recommendation to you is to make the offer of the loan as we've suggested, and then give them time to work through it. That assumes this thing is locked down. I'm not convinced it's locked down. I think you can go back and talk to those other lenders and work through the process. The frustrating part for the staff, I have to tell you, is we were never contacted about this project. beforehand. There was no discussion about financing this project beforehand, and it was dropped on us as a fait accompli, and that is not the way to do business. So, you know, to line up all your other financing and then come in and say, well, of course you'll give us a balloon payment at 0% interest for 20 years, that's quite an assumption to make. You would think somebody would have contacted my office, the planning department office, the budget office, the finance director's office, somebody in this government and say, I need to talk to you about financing this project. That never happened.
If I could interject, staff from MHO were in active dialogue with everyone on commission, and it's my understanding.
Not me.
Let her finish.
We're in,
Let her
we're-
finish.
Hey, please,
Mike,
we're
let
in
her finish.
active communication, and that includes meetings, it includes messages, and also reached out to staff in several different departments throughout the process. So I think I hear in your frustration that this did not evolve in a way that if we had a clear, transparent, consistent process, it could have. How I read this is, you know, the way these major housing projects unfold is that the largest financing comes through tax incentive credit programs and through state-run housing finance programs. And that only once those are approved, does it make sense to go for local government funding, which is frequently significantly smaller than that. So I think we need to table frustrations about process, because those are symptomatic of a process problem that has existed, which is there's no clear, consistent way for community partners to apply for this. And I think we need to see this for what it is, which is this is a project about providing safe, affordable housing to members of our community who deserve that as a basic right and who have very limited means to accessing it. This isn't about, unlike other ways that we look at public funds and investment strategies, this is a different breed of project we're being asked to invest in. So I hear that frustration. I feel a frustration and an eagerness to have clear public-facing processes in place. I'm very interested in the concept of a revolving loan fund as one tool among many, but would like to take the time to figure out when we would make a revolving loan fund the tool we use relative to the specific project. And I share the concern that that concept isn't the right tool for this project, but I like the concept very much. And I hope that we can use tonight's discussion, I'm looking forward to it, as an occasion to kind of move the needle on how we work on our strategic priority around affordable housing, how we do it in a way that's consistent, clear, public-facing, that works for staff who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on figuring out how the financing will happen, but that also works for the people in our community who badly need a roof over their, a roof to live under. So that's kind of just some initial thoughts.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve the funding based on the model that was just presented tonight.
So here's what I would ask. Does anybody, but just say, you know, we're going to offer these terms when there's all this evidence showing it's completely impossible to do it, to just say, work it out. I mean, what does that mean? You know, what specific ideas do the people who are supporting this motion have that would make it financially plausible for them to do it? With a couple of things to keep in mind. You know, the rent structure for this project, it is already decided. This project has been through the State Housing Finance Agency. It's qualified for millions of dollars. It's going to bring millions of dollars of tax credit equity investment to Buncombe County through a very competitive process, which I believe the Buncombe County staff have, in the city, I mean, there's a whole process we go through to work with these kind of projects in this area. It's gotten home consortium funding and other funding behind it. So the cost to build these 95 apartments, unless someone's got some idea for how to lower the cost of materials or labor, it is what it is. The income from the project is what it is. So does anybody have a plausible solution for how it would actually be able to repay those funds with the rent levels that are so affordable for the project, which is why we want it in the first
Okay,
place?
so
Hold on one
let me
second.
say that I support the project. I think the project is a very good project. I think it's a perfect place to locate the project. We've been presented with a funding model that does not make my great-grandkids have to pay the bill That's the problem I have with it, is that 20 years, we have a balloon payment. I have voted for and supported every single one of these projects. I am not against this project. However, I did make a motion that we support this project. As far as answering all those questions, I don't have all those answers. My responsibility is to approve good projects, which I believe this one is, in a practical fashion, which has been revealed to us that in the past we have not been doing that.
Well, look, and I'm frustrated too, and that's part of the reason, as Jasmine said, we're going to talk about the process. I would like for us to get involved in these projects a lot earlier, have more discussion about it. I think that's going to be a good thing. But
I'd like to have those answers.
but again, to just say the reason we're proposing the repayment terms on this is that it would be great because it would fund other projects, but no one can actually say that this project is possible based on what's proposed. And that's my problem with it, is that there's a proposal on the table which no one has presented a credible case would actually make this project financially feasible.
May I speak?
Sure.
Eagle Market Street. I got a PowerPoint I'd like to be put up. So I'm going to show you a little bit of mountain housing.
All right.
That right there, Eagle Market Street, that was in December. Just talking about all these grants that they get from the state and everybody else. That's an apartment that was approved. They stuck a number on the thing. And, the county could not get a temporary permit down at DSS because it didn't have a sidewalk. If you look at that, it don't have a sidewalk, it's got a pallet. And the city approved it because there's $5.5 million into it already so that they could get it through. Our $2 million would still be in the bank because the grant would have been gone. Let's look inside this building. Now, does that look rentable? It's got lights hanging. This was approved that day. No carpet, no nothing. Move on up. Next slide, please. There's the lights hanging. They're not lit on the inside. So, the city didn't do what it's supposed to do in the process. They did something that they would not do for the county. They approved something to make sure that they got the grant money. Without the grant money, that deal would be dead. And keep going. There's a hallway. Looks good, don't it? Next. Ours upstairs. Nothing there except concrete and just some asphalt or some sheetrock. Keep going. There you go, concrete. Keep going. And now we're getting close to a bathroom. Let's look at it, keep going. Now look at the sink. Does that look pliable to the state law? Even underneath of it where the spigots are not done right. It's just 2x4s holding the sink up. City approves stuff like this, best I can tell. Keep going. All the stuff's not been put in. But they approved it that day. Keep going. Shower and stuff, keep going. Sprinklers, they're there, but where are they hooked to? Keep going. It's just concrete, no carpet, no nothing, not livable, and the city stuck a number on it and called it an apartment without a sidewalk out front, and it was not to be approved. What happened here is Mountain Housing. It was a $13 million project. So how did they come up with $5 more million, $5.6 more million? It cost them $18.8 million. So if they can't come up with $100,000 a year to help us, to help other bands, like, homeless people, different things, this was a disaster. I told them it was a disaster. It is a disaster. One more thing. Show me a thermostat. Because the heat's not, well, there's your stairwell, concrete with a rail coming up it with concrete walls. Keep going. Looks nice, open box up there on the other end. Keep going. Looks good, don't it? That's approved. Keep going. Look at the temperature. So here's the city does something, and we're over here talking about giving somebody $2.2 million. This man has a very good idea how to make it work. They come up with, once this deal died and they had to tear it down and start over, they had to come up with money. They took half, so they had to go back to the state. They had to go to the bank downstairs. They had to move this money forward to be able, you know, to get the other money. I'm sure there's some insurance, but you had a crane set down there for a year and a half. It didn't get used for nothing. So, you know, it's not a very good idea to step up and say, we wanted, sure, I want people to have affordable housing, Brandon. I like what he's brought forward. That's what our people do. That's our people, not us as a board making the decision. Our people have to help make a decision so that we can move forward with other Habitat and all of them. They're all out there looking at us now, wanting some money, you know. And if they can't come up with $100,000 a year, I was in this 6 years ago when they wanted to put one. I went to a 6:30 breakfast with Wanda Green and sat out in Black Mountain, and basically they wanted to put one at the Beacon plant, apartments, the old Beacon plant. But she looked at me and she said, well, they want $2 million. I said, they do? Yeah, they just want to give it to us. I said, no interest for 20 years. And I said, what? She said, well, at the end of 20 years, it'll be wrote off, so they're not going to end up paying anything anyway. We won't know if they have to pay anything because it'll be a different commission. This way, we're setting stuff in facts that you got to give this much money. Now, they can go up on the rent a little bit because there's people around here that, down here,
True.
oh, wait a minute. Eagle Market Street, how they pay $1,000 and $1,300 a month for 2 bedrooms with no parking. Excuse me? Excuse me?
Not true.
They do. So, he has the right idea. Him and Nate, they worked hard on it. They put it together. I'm for what they're for. But you see what we have to go through. That's a mess. And the city would lose $5.5 million. We would have lost $300,000. The grants would have been gone. And they approved that total disaster.
But this project's being permitted by Buncombe County, right? So this whole City of Asheville certificate of occupancy issue is completely irrelevant to what we're actually talking about tonight. Is that not right?
It don't matter. Everything you're doing now is for the city to start with, okay? And I'll prove that here in just a little while.
Any other comments? We're going to take public comment on this in a minute. Any comments from other commissioners who haven't spoken yet?
Let me ask a question. Maybe I'm fuzzy on this part. Has our staff met with the staff from Mountain Housing?
Nate Pennington has met with them and gone over this with them, yes.
So it's not a surprise.
No, not beforehand. No, to my knowledge, nobody talked money with us. So we
You have with this proposal, though? right?
Yes, Nate went over it with them.
Mr. Wood, have you looked at other municipalities who have proposed something similar to look at any successes, any lessons learned? Are other municipalities with affordable housing doing something similar?
I have used this in a city in Georgia.
I'm talking about North Carolina.
Well, I'm saying the revolving loan fund idea I've used in Georgia, so I know that it works.
But for a
I'm
project
looking
that
at,
has
for
25%, you know, is set at, for folks at 25% or 30% of AMI, I mean,
Well, I guess where I'm at, Brownie, is if we go with what they're recommending, we're foregoing $3 million worth of investments that we could put into other affordable housing. I don't think it's too much to ask for them to go back and see if they can rework this with the other people involved and see if they can make it work. And that saves the $3 million that we can put into other projects.
Yeah, and I don't think it's too much, you know, as I said, you know, I'm not saying no, I don't think it's too much to ask. If we can do multiple projects, if we can turn one project into 5, and we deeply care about affordable housing in Buncombe County, and I know you think I'm, you know, chattering on, but and we deeply care about it, then it's worth testing this model and doing this model. It's worth that. And the reason we don't know a lot of this information, it's no reflection on, and people at Mountain Housing has treated me with deep respect. I respect them. I respect what they do. They've come to me and talked to me many times over things. But most of the way this has been done is that we have talked about it to commissioners and felt like that the commissioners liked it and felt like it would be passed, and then we approve it. But then we find out that this is going to be a balloon payment in 20 or 25. This one's 25 years. In 25 years. So I have a problem with that. I have a problem with a balloon payment in 25 years. I have a problem with that. And to ask to use this model for them to go back, look at it, and try to work with it is not the end of the world. It is not. We support that area. We like that project. And to the chairman's point, this is a different model, so it does have different rents. So the rents are lower, It is. It's different than the other projects. It is different. And that's why it's a good project for that area. However, we've been giving $2 million at the end of 20 years, receiving $2 million at the end of 20 years or 25 years, and that's not a comfortable thing for me anymore to do. And I find out we've done that on the last couple. So there's got to be a better way to do it. And we don't need to spin it that this is George's deal. This is not George's deal. We had this discussion among a few commissioners on how can we do it? How can we do it better? And so he has done that in Georgia. He has done, and that is a fair answer to the question. But I am not advocating anything because George said it. No disrespect to George. It's a good way for us to get out of the current model and get a good model where we can do more of these projects. So
We invest money in other strategic priorities, early childhood, education, healthy living. We're not asking those folks to pay us back for those investments.
yeah, but you're not taking the money 20 years down. That's
We're not asking them to pay anything back.
We're not going to.
looking
That's
at what they're
different.
producing.
That's different.
Because they're making an income, you think that's different versus.
No, I think it's different because
I-
it's bad policy, with all due respect. It is bad policy. If we're going to do it for nothing, we need to do it for nothing. We need to put $2 million a year in, or whatever, and we need to do one of them every year. If that's what we're going to do, fine.
I actually think that having a housing trust fund with a permanent commitment at that level is a great idea, and I'd love to talk about doing that as part of, again, this is, December 2017, we unanimously approved a strategic priority to provide safe and affordable housing to folks across Buncombe County. And I think given everything else we have been dealing with in this time period, I'm actually proud of the work that we have done to move the needle on that, and feel like with a new permanent county manager coming on board, it's a great time for us to really kind of sharpen the focus on the specific tools we're using around affordable housing. And I actually really love that idea. I think a permanent commitment around affordable housing is exactly one of the tools we should have in our arsenal around this. I think the revolving loan fund is a really interesting tool. I just don't think this is the right project to launch it with. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that we need to be, we need to approach this with sort of surgical precision. You use the right tool for on the right kind of diagnostic for the right fix. And I just think this, because of the level of affordability in this project, frankly, it feels reckless to me to sort of impose this, to force fit this to be the project through which we would launch a revolving loan fund.
Okay. So I agree respectfully with Chairman Farrar on the putting money in for a housing fund. I don't know the amount, but I also agree with you that Mike's looking at me like I'm, but I don't disagree with having a certain amount of money that you invest back in the community when it comes to affordable housing. But we don't have that. We don't have that policy. And, we're trying to establish something tonight, and I get it that the timing's not the greatest, but it never is. When we did Lee Walker Heights, how long did it take us to approve Lee Walker Heights? How long did we look at that? 2 years? And they came in and they put up it was
all kinds of stuff.
Oh, gosh, it was such a great presentation, and we haven't had that. I mean, I got the information on it, and I thought it looked good. I liked it, you know. But the model is, I think most of us can agree that we'd like to do this project. It's just the model is, you know,
Well, that was the same model as this one, except it was more money,
Yeah, but we approved.
and
But we
the
saw
city
it.
was putting in a lot of money, so that's why it wasn't even more money from the county. So
We did $1 million a year, wasn't it?
it's a bigger,
1.1 million?
yes, it's a bigger project too, so it's
$4
it's
million.
fine.
about the money.
But it's these, none of these, look, none of these, the low-income housing tax credit program is the most powerful program in the United States for the creation of deeply, permanently affordable housing. They do require public investment in them, no question about them. You know, these are not, you know, these are for folks making, will be affordable to folks making 30% of area median income. So it'll provide affordable housing to many of the, you know, the working poor,
Right.
the poorest of the working poor, and veterans. It is in the same neighborhood as a school that we just built, which has the largest student homeless population in Buncombe County. This is a great project. It is a great investment. The pro forma does not support this, and there's no way that this project will happen if we approve this motion. Some other project that is for home ownership or for a very, you know, moderate income project, that would be fine, but it's not for this, it's not for this project.
Is that accurate? It won't happen?
It will
can't
not,
ha-
absolutely
How
not
do we
happen.
know that?
Because it's the way we've seen every other one of these projects that is using low-income housing tax credit
I mean, I don't
projects
have
from
the
this program.
experience with
They've
it.
all needed significant support. They've
Well,
all needed it.
I get that, but what you're saying is that this, if we do this project this way, if we agree to fund this project, but under the model where we're receiving income back annually instead of at the end of 20 years, you're saying this project will fail?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well-
Definitely.
Well, now both of y'all are saying it, which is cool. But,
Yeah.
well, the three are saying it, so, okay, but how do you know that? How do you know that? How does the public know that? How do I know that? How do we know that?
There's a pro forma, and a lot of us have spent a lot of time looking at it, and it's $100,000 negative every year if we require the repayment terms that are proposed.
But Brownie, how did you
How do we
go
know
back
that?
to Eagle Market Street? Let's back up. Let's go back to Eagle Market Street for just a minute. How did they come up with $5.8 more million? You know, they made, it's down there and it's working now. I showed, you know, how they did the stuff, but it's a $13 million project turned into 18.8 million. So somehow they found some more money from somewhere. They either went downstairs to TD Bank and got some more or whatever they did, but they got the $2 million from us now because I held it up for 6 years and you helped me vote to do that.
Well, I tell you what, let's take public comment on this, including, of course, from Mountain Housing, because they know more about this than all of us, so people can ask them questions, we'll hear their perspective, but let's go ahead and have the MHA folks come up to talk about it. We've talked plenty. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Cindy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman Newman and Buncombe County Commissioners, for considering our request for East Haven this evening. I am Cindy Weeks, Vice President at Mountain Housing Opportunities. I gave you all a handout, which is basically a summary of my comments this evening, but I'm not exactly sure where to start. I've served on the Board of Adjustment for the county, the Planning Board for the city, and I've presented to numerous boards of elected officials over my 30 years in the field. So I kind of feel like I'm a little bit in rebuttal mode, but I think I'll go ahead with my presentation and then we can, answer some of the more specific questions after that. Anyway, we have read and considered the staff report and we appreciate the time that the staff has taken in studying East Haven. However, we are unable to structure this loan to make principal and interest payments as directed by staff. Because our rents are so deeply affordable and will meet the needs of thousands of families and individuals in Buncombe County, there is limited cash available to pay loans. In fact, if we were required to make payments as specified in the staff report, our cash flow would be negative at a minimum $100,000 in the first year and every year thereafter. Under these terms, we will not be able to construct East Haven. There are only 2 permanent long-term loans for East Haven. We have a bank loan. This loan is required to be structured as a principal and interest-paying loan. The loan amortization will be 35 years, and the loan interest will be 6%. We are required to make these loan payments in full monthly. The other loan is a loan to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. This loan is typically structured to use the rest of the available cash, and it's structured at 0.5% interest. Loan payments vary from year to year depending on the amount of cash available. We spoke to NCHFA about Buncombe County's request to get some payment on the loan, as they would have to share their debt service with Buncombe County. NCHFA does have a long history of sharing cash flow with local government. Therefore, we're prepared to make the following alternative proposal, and we ask for approval this evening. A 20-year term at 0% interest, payments annually toward principal of $10,000 per year, years 1 to 10, $7,500 per year, years 11 to 15, and $5,000 per year, years 16 to 20. That would assist in the revolving loan that you and the staff have interest in, and honestly, it's the best we can do. Whereas we asked at the last meeting on January 15th for disbursement of these loan funds over 3 years, we're prepared, we studied our cash flow projection, and we're prepared to stretch that to 4 years. And you'll see in your table there in the report our disbursement request. During construction, $500,000 at construction loan and equity closing. That's estimated for April and May of this year, and that's in this county budget year. $425,000 at 50% completion. That's estimated for about a year from now, and that would be in the very next budget year. Another $425,000 at 100% completion, estimated in October of 2020. That's in the July 2020 to June 20, or July 2020 to June 2021 Buncombe County budget year. And then the final $850,000 at permanent loan closing, which is the following budget year of July 2021 to June 2022. As Mr. Newman, or Chairman Newman said earlier, these milestones will be approved by your own Buncombe County staff as well as certified by our architects. So when it comes to 50% completion, there won't be any controversy about whether it is 50% completion or not. It will be affirmed by your staff. Finally, we agree to extend our period of affordability from the 30 years we are required to the full physical life of the buildings, or 50-plus years, instead of the required 30 years. We also agree to pay property taxes, and we agree to not request a rebate from local government, even though that is an opportunity provided by state government. So this is our request this evening. I apologize myself for any misunderstandings with communication with staff. We did meet with Nate Pennington and Donna Cottrell. We gave them every piece of information they asked for. They have our cash flow projections in full. I'm not sure if they shared those with Mr. Wood. We assumed that they did. I personally called Mr. Wood and left a phone message and emailed him requesting a meeting, so I didn't receive any call back
You sent it
or
out the day we
email
sent
back.
the agenda out. That's
No,
a
I
little late in
didn't,
the
Mr.
pro-
Wood.
yes, you
I
did.
sent it,
Put
I
the
sent
date
it a
on
week
You can
before
check the
that.
date on the
No, I
email.
sent it. As a matter of fact, I asked Mr. Pennington for a copy. I knew that he had submitted the staff report the Friday before it was published on the agenda, and I was told that we were waiting for Mr. Wood to approve it.
I'm talking
The-
about the agenda 2 weeks ago, when you made your initial request. That agenda went out the previous Wednesday. That's the date you sent me an email.
Well, you know,
I'm just saying.
I
can't-
understand,
I
Mr.
can't
Wood,
respond.
and again, my apologies for the misunderstandings, but for us, we're kind of in the middle of a very drastic shift in Buncombe County. We were operating under the old system where we met with John Creighton and Wanda Green and discussed these issues. And now we're under a new set of circumstances, and it's been a little difficult for us to find the way to communicate with staff and commissioners that makes the most sense. We haven't received any clear direction on that. So again, if that was unclear, my apologies to staff and to the commissioners.
Do you go to a bank and try to borrow money without talking to the higher-ups? This is our county manager. You went to people before him, before he ever even knew about it, and then he finds out about it on the day that he puts the agenda out.
Let's focus on the project at hand, which is about a strategy to provide housing to people in Buncombe County.
No,
And-
let's look at, I agree with that, but let's look at it if we have to look at it in a different form. He's got a different form laid out there for us to look at. That's a good form. You know, they figured out how did you come up with?
let's
how
talk-
did-
let's
wait,
talk
wait, wait.
specifics
How
of
did you
how-
come up with another, 13 million to 18 million to finish this down here with what I showed up there that, you wouldn't have got your grant if the city hadn't have passed it? Yeah, the city passed it. But they wouldn't pass it for the county because there's no sidewalk. So, there's gifts given. They had 5.5 million tied into you at that point. So they had to do something to cover their sale.
Let's
But
get in the here and now and talk about the proposal that staff have developed and the proposal that MHO is putting forth as an alternate proposal.
Well, there's
Let's have a
questions.
discussion on that, because this is what we're going to be voting on tonight, not relitigating Eagle Market Street.
If I can make one comment on that, we did have a very big challenge at Eagle Marketplace. However, we completed the project. Mountain Housing Opportunities has a 30-year history of building and completing projects on budget and on time. We, more than anyone, and more than anyone myself, suffered through the issues that we encountered at Eagle Market. But I'm very proud of our board and staff and all of our lenders, including Buncombe County, that everyone hung together through that, and we got it done, and we have 62 families living there today.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Do people have any other questions for Cindy right now about the information she shared?
I mean, she did bring back a $172,000 payback. You did present that to us just now, which I'll read it because not all the public has that. I want to make sure they know that. It's
Yeah, go
162, thanks, 162.5. $10,000 a year, years 1 through 10, $7,500 a year, years 11 through 15, $5,000 a year, years 16 through 20. That's $162,500. So I'm not rehashing history or anything. I'm trying to stay in the present right here on this particular one. And I don't want us to kid ourselves on these numbers, okay? If we're going to give the money, then let's give the money. We did that at, help me out, I just said it just a minute ago, Lee Walker Heights, right?
Well, it's actually the exact same, it's a
Understand, but
balloon
we did
payment
$4
loan.
million. Well,
It's a balloon payment loan, the exact same thing.
but we're paying $1.1 million a year for 4 years,
That's right.
is what we're doing. And we're
As a-
getting,
With no,
for 4 years.
that's what we're investing, and it is my fact checked, it's my understanding that we're not receiving payments during the duration of that project.
Fact check?
Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, on Lee Walker, the county is providing the $4.2 million as a grant to the Housing Authority that they are lending to the project. No
That's a
payments
grant.
of principal or interest for the entire life of the project. We're proposing this be a loan from Buncombe County
Got
to
it.
the project, so you will have a lien against the
Okay,
project.
I got that. But so that was a grant.
Right, and Eagle Market was a loan.
That's right. So, and that's what we're talking about tonight. You know, I'm not here talking about, you know, your ability to do X, Y, or Z. This is about, do we want to, because you gave us back that you could do 162.5, right? Chairman said that you couldn't do anything.
No, I said they couldn't do the terms that are proposed.
Okay. In fairness, that's exactly what you said. They couldn't do the terms that was said, okay? What I'm saying is that if this is all you can do, then there's no way you can pay back the $2 million. So if you can't pay the $2 million back, I don't want in 20 years somebody else having to deal with that. This is a way to deal with it. That's the motion on the floor. Maybe there's other ways to deal with it, but
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes,
make a
sir.
comment?
Yes, sir.
I just want to point out, this is actually a more lenient deal than you gave them on Eagle Market.
I'm sorry, say that again?
This is a more lenient deal than you gave them on Eagle Market. Eagle Market, they had to wait till the end of the project to get the money. They're requesting this money in 4 installments. So first of all, you're giving them the money early. Now, the only part where they're making any concession is giving you back 162.5 a little earlier than the balloon payment. But, I mean, this is, in my view, this is going the opposite direction of where we're trying to get to.
Except
this is more
that-
lenient than Eagle Market.
Except they're not antagonists in a negotiation. They're partners working with our government trying to house people who need housing.
Well, yeah.
And if, the frame on this is not how do we recoup investment dollars, it's how do we provide housing to people who have no other way to get housing. And no, the paradigm of leniency and striking, this is not a business negotiation. This is about how we are responsible, moral stewards of public funding to create a safety net for those who do not have the most basic needs met in their lives. And it's offensive to me that we persist in treating this like a business negotiation.
This is a they've come back with negotiating this. That is a negotiation.
Well, first of all, I take exception to that. To say that this is more moral than the one we've come up with. You know, if the whole issue is doing more affordable housing, the proposal we've come up with does more affordable housing. So to say that one is more moral than the other, I take exception with that.
When you got $3 million extra that's left, if it goes the way he's talking about, that Homeward Bound and, you know, the other agencies can come in and step in, and they're gonna go under the same boundaries. This needs to be fixed, point blank. This totally needs to be fixed, and, you know, because we want to do something, I want affordable housing. I don't like zoning. We can put trailers everywhere, and that's real affordable. But right now, we can't do that, because we tell people what they can do with their property. Now we're going to tell people what, you know, they can build. Now we're going to tell people, you know, everybody has to have a house. No. It's called life.
So I'd like to finish the
Thank you.
public comment on this, and then we're going to vote on this. Okay? Mr. Yelton.
Well, I just see the 2.5 million just jump to 62.5, because we're going to do that for 25 years, right? We're going to establish a fund, and it's going to be there every year. That will not work for this board. I've seen it for 20 years. I don't care what you do. If you go and give them the 2.5 straight up, or you do the proposal that you've got to turn money over and keep it rolling and keep it rolling and keep building, this board will have a super good project pop up next year, bingo, and everybody say, oh, it's so good, we got to do it. And you know, Al, I'm telling the truth. And there'll be right now with this board 4 vote for it and 3 vote against it. What I see is a train wreck coming. Because you know something? It's immoral to tax us that were born and raised here and crapped in an outhouse and had to carry water to the house to tax us out of our existing property that we were raised on. That's what immoral is. And I can tell you right now, you talk about your affordable housing. Yeah, trailers are affordable. And I've made this suggestion many years ago when zoning was brought up. If you require them to keep the trailers up, graded, Joe, and you require outbuildings to be color-coded with the trailers, you can build a nice development with trailers, which is affordable. So I don't see anything good coming out of this board right now. But I suggest that those of you up there realize what I just said. It is immoral to run your locals out of here. Because I heard that a previous county chairman said he didn't want any hobby farmers because he was against people having 10 acres. I've been pushing forever. 10 acres, if you got 10 acres, you got 100 acres, right? You can put that in conservation easement and have places to soak up water. But no, you go for the big boys with the big acres, and you take the tax dollars from the guy that's got the little small piece of property. So talk about immorality all you want to. Think about what I said. Yeah, I'm angry. I'm tired of seeing for 20 years this board, oh, that's a great project, we got to do it. And what do? They dip into my pocket and everybody here's pocket and even your own pockets and pay for it, unless you work for a nonprofit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Hi, and please let us know your name and where you live. I forgot to say that.
Chairman Newman and Commissioners, my name is Carol Groban. I live in Swannanoa, and I'm a member of our local community nonprofits board of directors, Friends and Neighbors of Swannanoa, which we call FANS for short. I think many of you received a number of emails or other messages from people in the Swannanoa community in support of this project. I think most of us in this room probably have the good fortune of having somewhere on our person a set of keys in our pocket or in our purse. And on those keys is probably one particular key that opens the door to our home. And if we're lucky, for most of us, that home is a place where we feel safe and secure and that we can afford to live in. And just the fact that we have that key on our key ring relieves us of a great deal of worry and stress. It allows us to focus on things like raising our families, going to work and doing our jobs, helping other people, our neighbors, contributing to our communities. That key doesn't just open the door to our house. It opens the door to opportunities that unfortunately a lot of our neighbors don't have. So I feel like the Commission is correct in identifying affordable housing as one of the key areas that needs to be addressed in our community. What we need to do is put keys in more people's hands and do that as quickly as we can. Not having a safe place to live leads to all sorts of other problems. And those are problems for the individuals, for the families, and they're problems for our community. And those problems cost money. Addressing those problems costs money, and that's something we haven't really talked about here, is that by putting, over the years that East Haven will be there, hundreds and hundreds of families into a safe, affordable home, we are actually reducing the costs of services and other problems that are created by people not having safe places to live. It's harder to quantify the value of that, but it's real. And that's not even taking into consideration the great reduction in human suffering. So I I know that there's questions about how exactly to fund this. I can't speak to the particulars of that. I can say that I feel that MHO has been very transparent in the community of Swannanoa with this project. They sought out friends and neighbors of Swannanoa early in the process a couple of years ago, requested meetings with us, engaged with the community about what our feelings were about the project, explored ways in which we could work with them in order to maximize the benefit of the project to the community. Sorry. So I ask for your support and funding in a way that will allow the project to move forward.
Thank you so much. All right, anyone else? All right, so commissioners, there's a motion and a second on the table. I just want to say again, I think a vote for this kills this project. This project does not work with these terms. Other projects could, but a project with this deep level of affordability, it's not even close. I appreciate the fact that MHO has come back with the principal payments they could make. I think we should certainly, accept those. So if this motion fails, my hope is that there'll be another motion to support the loan, to require the repayments that MHO is saying the pro forma can support, to support the provision that they will pay full property taxes on the project, will not seek the property tax abatement that these deeply affordable projects typically get as per state policy to help make them financially work. So they'll waive that and to increase the affordability period from 30 years to 50 years. So if this motion doesn't pass, I hope that we'll consider a motion to do that. And then after we do this, we're still going to talk about the process. And this whole discussion, I think, has sort of illuminated why we do need meaningful commission involvement in all this earlier in the process. So that'll be a good thing, and we'll take that up next.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask for a point of clarification here?
Sure.
On your repayment schedule, you're saying years 16 through 20, you'd pay $5,000 a year, so the total is $162,500. When are you proposing to pay the total loan? In year 20?
Yes, it would become due at year 20.
I just wanted to clarify, so the difference would be paid in 20 as well?
Yes.
Under your proposal?
And the one other thing I'll just say, if we get to it, in terms of the loan schedule, I think that does warrant more discussion. So if we get to that, I'm not necessarily automatically saying yes to what MHO has requested on that, because I do think we should think about that too. But anyway, are there any other comments before we vote on the motion that's on the table?
Yeah, we all know we're all seven are for affordable housing. We know that's a priority, correct? We're all. But, I mean, I'm looking at this format makes so much sense that we can have money coming back in finally instead of it all going out. And 20 years from now, I won't be here. My kids will be here. I wish we could get people so thrilled about worrying about the people that's losing their homes today that are over 60, 65 years old into it this much is what I'm hearing here. I just can't support it. I like the format where in 10 years, 15 years from now, we could be generating money back in and going back out and make more projects work. Yes, we may hurt one here, but down the road, I see we can help. And the future commissioners that come in here will say, you know what, that's a good plan. I'm like Commissioner Belcher. It would probably be better just give money away and not even look at it. But who's paying for it? We are. And these people that's on these fixed incomes are the ones that's suffering right now.
Anybody else? Okay. All in favor of the motion, which would require the principal repayments during the initial period, please say aye and raise your hand.
Wait, what's the motion again?
The motion on the table is to support the staff recommendation, which would require the principal repayments on the loan from the start, which MHO says won't work. That's the motion. So a yes vote is to approve those requirements.
So I'm going to rephrase, because that's not exactly what the motion is. The motion is to approve the project based on the model presented tonight.
By staff.
By staff.
Which requires the principal repayments.
Yeah.
At the level that they outlined. Yeah. Okay, that's the motion on the table.
Yes, that's the motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No.
No.
No.
Okay. The motion fails 4-3. All right, I'd like to make a motion that we support the amount of the loan requested by MHO. We require the loan repayment at $10,000 per year of principal payments, $7,500 per year for years 11 through 15, $5,000 per year for years 16 through 20, that the property will pay full property tax payments, and that the affordability period will go to 50 years. But that it will be a balloon payment otherwise at the end of that initial term, as requested by MHO. So I will make that motion. The motion I'm making does not speak to the schedule for the disbursements, because I would like to have more discussion about that. So this is just about kind of the
I'd like to have a
the repayment terms, not when does our money go in during the construction of the project.
So when are you getting the balance? And how are you getting the balance? Is it a balloon at the end of 20 years? So what amount is that?
It would be
2.2 million minus 162,500.
So you're getting a balloon
correct.
that they can't afford.
At the end of 20 years, and they're going to have money.
You're getting a balloon that they can't afford at the end of 20 years, and is what you're doing. And you believe that's the right thing to do for MHO.
What are you basing that they can't afford that on?
They can't afford 110 a year.
But that's
and
those are two
can't
different
afford-
propositions.
No. They can't afford 110 a year. How are they going to afford $2 million in 20 years?
Let me ask for clarification.
I would like to know.
Typically, at the end of the first 20 years, when the loans come due, we reorganize the debt. A lot of the debt is paid off to the bank, and we look at getting other loans to support the project at that point. I haven't run this out for 40 or 50 years. I can't tell you what those payments would be, but that's typically how we do it and how we've done it on past projects.
But like, for example, the other bank loan, that's 6%, a lot of that will have been paid off then, so the project will be able to support different things at that point in the future than it does when it's still paying off that loan.
And
I'd like
also,
to make-
our rents, we'll be raising our rents through that period of time and have higher rents to support more debt.
One motion.
So I've made a motion.
Well, no, one
You want to amend?
in the
motion?
area down
Amend
here
the
at the
motion.
bottom.
Or you
Do
want
the
to
same thing we did at Eagle Market Street. They don't
sorry.
get a dime until it's over, it's built.
Okay, let's see if there's a second to the motion first before we start amending it. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Commissioner Fryer, what were you?
So you want, go ahead.
I would like to see,
You want to amend the motion?
huh?
You want to amend the motion?
I'd like to amend the motion.
Okay.
To where that, well, I don't need to amend it because I ain't gonna vote for it. so
Well,
don't
go
worry
ahead and do it, Commissioner Fryer. Say what's on your mind. Go ahead.
about it. Eagle Market Street, we kept all the money until we just give it to them here a little while back.
Mm-hmm.
Here they're asking for 500, 450, 450, 850 at the end of the loan, so, when it's done, let's give them the money, not before.
When do they start paying for it then, 20 years from now?
No, he's giving it to him.
No.
No, he's giving it to him.
No, it's 2 years, it'll be 2 years.
2 years.
Now.
So,
Get this as we go along, don't hurt, do anything.
so you're saying to disperse this money when the project is done?
As he had in Eagle Market.
Are you giving it to them or a loan?
And they supposedly can get it and be done in 2020. That's not far along.
It would be a loan,
Okay.
but what you did on Eagle Market is you paid it when the construction was finished, and they had a certificate of occupancy, meaning the units could be occupied.
So,
I do not hear a second at this time.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Can I ask Cindy a question about
Let's
about
talk
this?
about it.
Cindy, so the proposals that the funds would be provided when the permanent loan, I think, or when the construction's finished. So could you tell us, is that something the project could support, or tell us what that means from your perspective?
That would cause us to have a larger construction loan and pay interest on that loan, which would add additional debt to the development process. I'm guessing anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000. It would be very difficult to do that, and I just want to point out that in the past, I know we're coming up with a new process for affordable housing, but in the past, and most recently evidenced by the approval of Lee Walker Heights, there are opportunities for payments on the loan to come in during the construction process at specific milestones that are approved by Buncombe County staff, and in the case of Lee Walker, it'll be city staff as well as lenders and anyone that has any oversight on the project. It would be extremely difficult for us to wait until the end of the project. I think that what Commissioner Fryer is referring to is that the county was very concerned about Eagle Market because of the problems that we encountered, and it was a good decision to wait till the end in that case. And probably if I was sitting on the commission, I would too. But I would go back again to loans provided by Buncombe County through your affordable housing fund right now that are approved by Buncombe County staff and the planning department, where those funds are provided during the construction project. That's happening right now. And in this case, I would also ask you to rely upon our 30-year history of starting, planning, funding, and building and completing projects on time and within budget, and not rely on just one project. So I thank you for your consideration of that.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just have a point of order on the motion. There was a motion to accept, but you didn't vote to accept the amendment.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Before the second was made. Was the second made on the motion as amended?
Second was made on the amendment to the motion.
Yeah, so I'd like to,
Okay.
I think we'll vote,
Okay.
we'll vote on the
Okay.
amendment here in
I-
just a second.
We just wanted to make sure for the minutes. And
Yeah, no, okay, thank you. So we're going to vote on this proposed amendment to the original motion in just a moment. Do people have any other questions about the amendment? You know, I would just say, again, this is why it'd be great to have like an affordable housing committee of some sort to, we are really getting down in the weeds now. And, I'd love for our funds to go in later. We are more protected that way. There's no question about it. But I'm also a little uncomfortable kind of trying to figure out the details of, this really complex pro forma sitting here in the middle of a board meeting. So I don't want to do something that's going to undermine the project. All things being equal, I'd love to support this motion. Because I'm not really sure how much it's going to affect it, I'm not going to support the motion now, but I also am not endorsing MHO's proposed schedule of payments either. Honestly, I think this is another thing that would make sense to kind of take out of the room, really look at in detail, figure out the financial consequences of it. If we can kind of show that, look, no, your pro forma can support this, we'd like to go in later, then I would be the first one to advocate for that. But I'm just not comfortable doing it in this room.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
So, why can't we do that? Why can't we look at other ways? I mean, you brought this up to us with a counter of what you could do. you know, why can't we look at this project a little bit more in depth instead of it being a, you know, yes this way, no this way? I mean, why can't we do that? I don't think that anybody here, I can't imagine with them agreeing that it's okay in 20 years to have a debt that today you cannot pay. You can't pay it. You don't know how you're going to pay it, yet you want us to give a loan for that on a project we deeply want to do. I don't think that's good. Now, if we don't agree with the model, totally fine. But surely somewhere in the middle is an answer to that, because it's not. You know, where I have a problem with it, and I think my colleague last time had a problem with it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you correct me if I'm wrong. That the concern is that we're going to get down to the end of 20 years. You're going to owe money that you can't pay, and then, you know, we say our grandkids and great grandkids because that means something to us. And but that's not a good model. So I don't want us to personalize this thing at all. You know, it gets a little that way sometimes, and that's because we get emotional, which is fine. I don't want us to personalize this at all. It is business, okay? But it can be done with the proper tools and the proper heart. But I still say that it doesn't make sense to say yes when I know you can't pay it back.
So the motion that the amendment is to require no funding in until the project is essentially construction's finished. All in favor of that proposed amendment, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's 3. All opposed? Aye. Okay. The amendment fails 4-3. Okay, back to the original motion. And again, the original motion does not endorse the MHO proposed construction payment schedule. I think we should leave that to look at in more detail in the future. To be, you know, those details should be worked out.
Can I say something,
Yes, sir.
Ronnie,
Yes,
as
sir.
we vote? You know, this has been the worst experience I've had tonight since I've been on the commission. And let me tell you why. It's the process. And if I'd put my banker hat on, I would agree with Don Yelton. I would have said throw all this out 30 minutes ago. But when I look at it emotionally and think of the poor people in Swanee Knoll who need housing and who need it today, and I don't question the good job Mountain Housing, what they do, and they've done over 30 years. But I'll tell you what, if I'm on the board for another 3 years or 4 years, I will support this. But if another process happens the way this has happened tonight, I will vote against it.
Al, may I say something, Chairman?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman Whiteside, that's my district. Just want to know. I go out there and you know what they want? Housing was not the project. They want jobs. They want something in Beacon so they have some place to work. You know, there's drugs everywhere. People go stand in the road to watch people go by and there's needles laying everywhere. You know, it's turned into a drug haven. And, you know, poor people need homes, and I'm 100% for that. Goes back to the same thing. I wasn't for zoning. And it goes back to modulars, trailers, whatever you want to call them. That's your affordable housing. But people, it's not, and then what Don had to say is right. The poor people that are having to make payments on their property tax that are in my age bracket and your age bracket, we're lucky. But there's a lot of people that's making payments on their property tax that own their homes. So, you know, we're not looking out for them. We're looking out for whoever we want to look out for, and it's their dollars looking out for them. So there's where I have a problem. I showed the problem originally that, you know, if the city hadn't have done what they'd done, that deal would have been dead on Eagle Market Street and it'd just been a building that's half done. that everybody had pulled. The bank would owned it totally. And you're right, 20 years from now, they got to go borrow money to be able to pay a debt of $2 million back. People, there's apartments being built all over this town, all over this county. You know, maybe they're not affordable, but the one thing about it is they're coming up everywhere and they're filling them up. So, I want to help the poor people, but we all have to try to help ourselves in ways. And I'm not God. You know, it's not my duty to tell people what I need to take their money and do with it. So that's where I'm at.
I'm sorry, I have to say one last thing. The folks that I've heard from District 2, with all due respect, Commissioner Fryer, have overwhelmingly reached out to support this project. They are teachers. I've heard from teachers in the Owen District, social workers, guidance counselors, first responders, folks who are going to benefit from this 95-plus unit affordable housing complex. I have not heard one negative comment, one comment about drugs, needle users. It has overwhelmingly been in support of this project and to take care of the folks in Swannanoa who desperately need affordable housing. We're clearly talking to different people.
Then we ought to pay for it.
All right.
One last thing. Well, I know, I'm sorry.
So-
Then we ought to just pay for it. We ought to just pay for it. Where I'm at is if you're not going to be able to pay the debt at the end of the year, let's don't kid ourselves with that. If we need to fund $500,000 a year for the next 4 years to do this project, and the merits are there to do that, then let's do that. Okay? But the process is, no. The process where we're going to get the money at the end of 20 years in a balloon is not the way, and I think that's your frustration, Mr. Whiteside, that is not the way to do this. It doesn't have anything to do with my heart, doesn't have anything to do with compassion. It doesn't.
It has everything to do with math, though, right?
Yeah, it's bad math. Bad math. Nobody here would make that loan, ever.
It's not a business.
I mean, hey, the thing is, 20 years from now, the loan can be
Transaction.
paid back very easy in 20 years if we continue to go the way we are. They come back in 19 years and 11 months and ask for 2.2 more million and pay this loan off.
And pay it and get it like that.
Yeah,
But-
that's the math,
but
Brantley.
I
When
would
you've owned business and
just
done
wouldn't
it,
give them the
and
money.
Commissioner Whiteside, what he said is right about banking would never even look at anything like this right here. Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
We
let's-
want to help affordable housing.
There are bank loans in this project, actually.
Yes, they are.
So
20-year, no
let's
interest.
vote. Let's vote. We've talked this really well.
Sure we don't want to give them the money?
I want the $162,500 back. I'm not sure why you don't. All in
I got
favor.
I got a bigger heart than you do.
You just want to subsidize everything, Joe. You
Joe
just
wanna
want
get it
to.
on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of the motion to approve the loan with the provisions I outlined, the repayment schedule as outlined. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. It passes 4-3. Okay. I think we're.
4-3?
Yes, sir. Okay. I think we've done what we can do on this tonight. There's still a few things to work out on details, but I think we know the headlines. So thank you all. All right, let's move. We still have to talk about the process a little bit further for future consideration of affordable housing projects. Mr. Wood, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about the process.
Okay, if you
Recommendation.
go to the back end of the memo, we talk about issue number 2. And issue number 2 is the new process that we're recommending to you. So the guts of it are, our recommendation would be include in the annual budget the amount of loan or grant funds that the BOC wants to put into affordable housing in the next year. The reason that I'm bringing this up is the way we're doing it now, you don't budget in your budget at the beginning of the year for affordable housing. And it really needs to be included in there, because what we're facing is you come along in February or March and you get requests for about $5 million. because this is not the only request you're getting. You're going to get a request, you have a request from Habitat for Humanity, and we just got one in from Homeward Bound. Our staff is reviewing those now. So if you did them as they've requested, it would be somewhere in that neighborhood. So now there are ways to whittle that down and get it into another fiscal year, but the bottom line is you're still going to make those amounts of appropriations. It may be over a 2 or 3 year period. So what we're recommending is that you go through your annual budget process and you decide on an amount you can afford to do on affordable housing in June when you adopt your budget. And that's the max. Then what you do is you develop an annual timetable for an application process, which would be integrated with the deadlines for the various grants and loans from other agencies that affordable housing developers use. This would also include the notification timing for federal tax credit awards. As Brownie said, that is a large chunk of what makes these go. So they need to have that in hand. That will probably be in the December to January timeframe. We're confident that these dates can be meshed into a good process. So the application process, third bullet, would be a request for proposals that would be within our budgeted funds under the same financial and legal terms as we've recommended for the MHO request. And I'm not going to go back through those. That's the proposal that we made to you. The planning staff would be the agency tasked with developing the RFP for BOC approval each year. Each year, the BOC would determine if it wants to specify a portion of the funding for home ownership versus rental units. For instance, Habitat would be home ownership. MHO is typically on rental units. Whether you want to serve special populations, and whether there's geographic dispersion of the housing throughout all areas of the county. The RFP would be written to reflect those goals. The planning staff would meet with potential developers to thoroughly review the goals, the financial and legal terms, and answer any other questions about the RFP process. The RFP would ask for details on the proposed project, such as location, acreage, number and size of the housing units, amenities, utilities, access to transportation and public transportation, or public transit, proximity to commercial areas, employment centers and schools, the total cost of the project and all sources of funding, the county's lien position for collateral, estimated construction time, financial information on the applicant, and other information to adequately evaluate the proposal. A staff review team from both the Planning and Finance Department would review and evaluate the proposals. The planning staff would evaluate the proposal from a planning and housing perspective. And of course, on MHOs, our planning staff has done that, and we've all concurred it's a good project. We're just differing on how to pay for it. The Finance Department staff would evaluate and compare the proposals from a financial standpoint, such as which proposal provides the most units in the most economical manner. These two departments would then work with the county manager's office to formulate a detailed report to the BOC recommending which proposals should be funded and at what amounts. And then the BOC would act on that recommendation at a public meeting that would include presentations by each of the applicants and review of the staff recommendation. We need to flesh a lot of this out, but that's an overview, that's the framework that we're proposing to you to move toward. And then we wouldn't have the kind of issues that we had come in on this particular project.
All right, thank you very much.
So do we give directions to establish that as policy tonight, going forward, with room for flexibility, or how do we do that?
So, I think generally this is a really rational process. We want to have a competitive process. We want to invest funds in this sector every year. We want to get the best projects. We want to, so I think I'm sure this will get, tweaked a little bit along the way, but I think it's a very good process. The one part I would like to propose that we add to this and we talked about this some at our last meeting, would be to have a affordable housing subcommittee of the commission to, basically work with the staff on this and the manager to just get some, because we are investing a lot of funds in this area now. We've identified it as one of our strategic priorities. So I think having some commission, this committee wouldn't have any direct decision-making authority, but to work on some of the policy issues, work on, look at some of the projects earlier in the process so that it's not just us reacting to it the first time when we're asked to vote up or down on a multi-million-dollar project. So I'm supportive of this, but I'd also like to propose that we do the subcommittee, very similar to the Early Childhood Education Subcommittee we recently formed.
So you're talking about 3 commissioners,
Yes, yes, sir.
just like the others?
Correct. And this is on the agenda, so we can, we can act on this tonight, or we can, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
So I'm going to make a motion to support this.
Second.
I'd like to introduce a amendment, friendly amendment, I hope, maybe, Joe? There's a lot I like about this, and appreciate the work that went into it. Under the 3rd bullet item, begins the application process would be our RFP, the second, I would like to propose that we amend that second clause. I'm sort of trying to think on the fly and welcome help on this, but my concern would be that if we use the same financial and legal terms as were recommended for the MHO project, those would be too constraining for some projects that might come forward. So an RFP process that perhaps outlined a range of funding strategies that could be utilized for different types of projects depending on the level of affordability and the way the financing packages were structured, something that was a bit more nuanced.
So let me suggest something for you, see if you think it's okay. I think if you're trying to figure it out on the fly, that we probably don't have to do it tonight. That if you're going to have a committee or whatever you're going to, that can be done. That can be done later. I don't think we should start. One is we'll be here all night if we do. I don't think we should start probably dissecting that. I think if we can agree that overall it's something we've never had before, and it's a good start, and then we can look at. I mean, there's maybe some things that just logistically don't work there, but
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were proposing that we adopt.
I am proposing we adopt it. Yes, I am.
Well, can it be kind of with the understanding that, we're going to form a committee to dig into the details of this. This is a general framework, but it doesn't mean we're literally permanently endorsing every different
don't think
aspect of
anything
that.
we
It's
do-
just- This is a great starting point for thinking about what what a healthy process probably looks
I
like.
mean, we can change anything down the road, but I think we should just go ahead and support it tonight like it is and move forward.
Support the creation of the subcommittee or the creation of the subcommittee and the recommendations outlined?
So here's where I'm at on the subcommittee. I'm passionate about affordable housing, be glad to serve on a subcommittee if I'm asked, and I have been, so I would. I don't think you need, more than just, 3 commissioners on it, and I think you can bog it down if you get, outside and you get, people trying to work their areas, and, that's our job. My job, your job's know Swannanoa, your job's know Swannanoa, my job's know my district, and I know my district. So, I think we can make, I think
That is what it's for. It's for three commissioners. And
I think they're from district, the way they.
My suggestion would be, and enough
1, 2, and 3.
would be yourself, Mr. Belcher, and Commissioner Edwards.
You willing to serve on that?
And I'd like to serve. If we
So
do this.
that's District 1, basically.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
yeah.
1, 2,
1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to suggest with this, so I guess we amend to put the subcommittee on there?
I sent out an email. I mean, we talked about it at the last meeting, and then I sent out an email this morning saying, hey, I hope we'll keep thinking about this. I think it
Okay,
makes
so can I
sense.
change my motion?
Sure.
Okay, so I want to change my motion to adopt this as read and I'm not going to put a time limit on the subcommittee. I'm just going to say we have a subcommittee and 3 people would serve from District 1, 2, 3. That we say it that way. That way we're getting that, and it be a 3 member committee, and it be represented by District 1, 2, and 3. That would be my motion.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
All right.
Oh, I'd
Point of
say.
As long as it's just
clarification,
3.
Is the motion
As long as it's just
Subcommittee
three.
Plus
It includes that, yes.
the recommendations.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
this and the subcommittee.
May I make a hope-friendly amendment then, which is that we strike the second clause of the third bullet point under the recommendations as part of this package?
I don't want to do that.
My
Let's
con-
do it later, because I don't.
Well,
you-
if we
you-
pass this as written, it's binding, it would be binding the RFPs to the proposed revolving loan structure that was presented tonight. And my concern is that doesn't fit every project that will come before us.
Can I read
If we
that?
strike this, it gives a discretion to the subcommittee to offer guidance on how we address that moving forward.
Okay, which,
I agreed.
It's, it says using the same financial and legal terms as recommended for the MHO request above. So I do share the concern.
okay, hang on just a minute. Okay, so remember. Okay, so here's what I'm willing to do. Listen to me on this, George, and see if I'm not, I don't want to dilute this, and I don't think this does if I do this. The application process would be a request for proposals that would be within our budgeted funds, period. Strike the rest. Will that be okay?
Well, the concern I have, I understand what you're talking
Same
about
financial and legal
flexibility. The concern I have is if you don't put these same financial and legal terms, then we really kind of gutted what the recommendation is. I think what I would suggest you do is leave that in there and then add a sentence that says the subcommittee can come in with recommendations of a different financial structure.
Okay, well, let's do that.
And that gives the flexibility
That's-
she wants while keeping this for the, what I would call the typical projects.
That that the subcommittee can make recommendations. How'd you say that? I would just say
For different
exceptions.
financial terms.
For different financial terms as an exception?
Yeah,
On exception?
something like that.
I think we can do
But
it.
you
That
could
gives
say
the-
a
That gives the
different fin-
flexibility, I think, that Jasmine is talking about.
To some extent, but it also establishes the baseline that the proposal we looked at tonight would be the normative tool. And while I think that's a tool we want to use on some projects, I would have concerns about establishing it as the baseline tool. And I would be thrilled to have three colleagues on commission working with staff take a deeper dive on maybe there's 3 primary tools we could identify that would work for 90% of projects coming through the door, and those could be articulated. I just don't, so that's where I would land on this. A lot of enthusiasm around the subcommittee and many of the recommendations, but concerns about that being too rigidly structured.
I share that same concern.
Okay, so somebody give me an alternative that's going to work, because this is not going to get into.
What you proposed, Joe, just say, it needs to work within the budget. Let's leave the details of what the different models we're going to want to consider to be. I mean, that's exactly the kind of stuff we want the committee to dive into, right?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, what we're going to do for home ownership and what we're going to do for homeless people are going to look completely different,
Very
right?
different.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, so when we say under the same financial and legal terms as we've recommended for MHO request, for the MHO request above, okay, so let me say this. I don't really like referring specifically to MHO request. I would rather refer to policy. Does that make sense? We're referring to an event rather than policy.
Right. Well, what I was doing there was not having to retype all of that.
I'm
It's the
with you.
same- It's the same terms.
Where are those terms at?
Under issue 1 on page 6,
Okay,
it's those 5 bullet points.
okay, so what that is that is a proving that loan structure as a tool,
Right.
okay? So how do we say that that is okay, but there may be other tools we want to use?
Well, that's why I'm proposing you just add a sentence that gives you the flexibility to bring forward other proposed flexible structures if you want to.
So why can't we take out the MHO language and just refer to page 6, bullet points 1 through 4?
Well, when we write it up, we will. This is just a proposal to you, but when we write it up, we'll bring it back to you as a resolution. We would spell all that out.
So it's coming back to us as a resolution?
We have to do this again?
Yay.
Well, no, I mean, once you
That's
determine
right.
it, we'll just have a written resolution. I would like a policy in writing, I think, so everybody's following it, and not having to refer back to this part of a memo or that part of a memo. It just come back with a resolution. But whatever you approve tonight is what we would bring back in 2 weeks. as a
Yeah, I mean, I think we're
resolution.
going to come back with whatever, our policies are going to be. I mean, we're going to come back with, recommendations.
I
So
thought the
give me
subcommittee was
back on
going to be
Channel 6.
working on those recommendations
We are, that's
before
what
we
I
brought it
said.
forth for a resolution in 2 weeks. Can someone clarify that for me?
I don't think we have to do a resolution. Let me find where I'm at. Help me out.
I mean, we need our time to dig in and look at our tools and how we're going to approach this
We're gonna
first.
do that for you. You won't have to worry about that.
Can we do a vote to create a subcommittee that then comes back in 2 weeks or a month with a set, working off the recommendations for staff, but having some time to dig into those and refine those?
I think we're going to do that anyhow. Let me go back to what I was going to do in the first place. Where's it at?
It's this one. You suggested just saying it will be within budget and add a period there, which I think is a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's, all
Okay.
the other stuff is in there, isn't it?
Yeah. It does not preclude doing exactly what's being
Right.
talked about here, just doesn't close the door
Right.
on anything is all
Right.
we're saying. So the third bullet point would simply say, the application process would be a request for proposals that would be within our budgeted funds, period. And they can look at all the different options for how it makes sense to most wisely invest those budgeted funds, which
Right.
can include that exact model that's being talked about. You good with that?
Getting close. I'm still thinking.
I propose amending the motion to say what I just said,
Oh,
okay? We just have to vote on this stuff. We need to move along, y'all. Is there a second to the proposed amendment?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, so that the third bullet point will read, the application process will be a request for proposals that would be within our budgeted funds, period.
So that's a friendly amendment. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to get in the weeds on that because we can make it whatever we want it to be.
We still need to vote? Heather's saying we still need to vote. It's a friendly amendment, but let's just
It's a
vote on
friendly
it.
vote on a friendly
All right,
amendment.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, back to the original motion. Any further discussion? And this is basically a general endorsement of the recommendations.
Yes. Right. Yes.
And the creation of a subcommittee with a member
Yes.
from 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Any members of the public who wish to comment on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
It's important stuff, man. Good job.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your.
Democracy.
on that.
Thanks, George.
All right. The next item on the agenda is recommendations on the medic request and EMS system staffing levels.
Okay. You
Chairman,
recently asked me-
can we take 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir, we can. Let's take a 10-minute
Let's take
break.
10-minute break.
I was just going to keep going. I can do this all night.
No, I was trying to not.
Magic fingers.
All right. We are back up, and the next item on our agenda is a discussion on recommendations on the medic and EMS system staffing levels. Mr. Wood?
Okay, I've given you a memo on this. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. You've all had it. But wanted to make a few points. You had asked me to make a recommendation on whether medic should be allowed to use the county's 900 megahertz radio system and to take calls that they are nearest to an incident. So in looking at that, I needed to study the entire organizational structure to understand how medic would fit into the overall emergency medical response environment. And in doing that, I found a second issue that we need to address, and that's the staffing levels of our EMS system. So I'm not going to get into all of the background on it. The recommendation is that my recommendation is to amend the current franchise agreement. And the franchise agreement right now is for convalescent care. That's non-emergency care. So the franchise agreement you would allow full ambulance services by medic within the unincorporated areas of the county for a period of 1 year to see how it works out, subject to the following conditions. And then if you're pleased with the level of service and how everything's worked out, the franchise can be extended for more years. I've already talked to Mr. Tolley, and he's in agreement with all of these conditions. Number one, we would require automatic vehicle locators on all medic ambulances that he intends to deploy for full ambulance services. Medic would pay the same annual fee as we charge the volunteer fire departments to be on this service. The AVL must be activated at all times that a medic unit is available to take calls. Number three, require that medic agree to station ambulances in locations assigned by County 911 Center in order to provide adequate coverage throughout the county. And by the way, this is currently being done because they sometimes back us up when we're down an ambulance. So we're already actually doing some of these things. Hold medic to the same standards for equipment and drugs on an ambulance and personnel, training, certification, and staffing levels, et cetera. The number of intermediate EMTs and paramedics per unit as we require of county EMS and the volunteer fire departments. Require insurance and a hold harmless clause to protect the county from any litigation arising from how medic personnel respond to a call. Number six, clearly state that there will be no self-dispatching. They're not doing that, but I just wanted it clearly understood that nobody can dispatch themselves. All calls into the 911 center must be dispatched to a specific unit, as the county is legally liable for properly handling any call received by the 911 center. And I just want to stress that point. When you operate a 911 center, you've taken responsibility for that call in how it's answered and also how everybody's dispatched and make sure that they get the proper level of care. Number seven, medic must immediately respond to a dispatch call from 911 center, either accepting or rejecting the call so there's no delay in response. In other words, we can't be waiting around. They've got to make the call that they're going to take it and go or decline it so that we can immediately dispatch someone else. Medic must follow all EMS protocols on informing the 911 center of A, acceptance of the call, B, arrival on the scene, C, that they're en route to the hospital, D, they've arrived at the hospital, and E, they're completed and they're back in service and available for calls. All radio traffic is recorded and timed so that we can determine the precise times for all these steps. These are put into our reports as well to assess how quickly we are responding to patients. It also allows us to deal with any complaint we may have because we're able to play the tape back. And again, that tape is also timed. So that's basically the proposal on those, on the situation with medic. The second part is, as I got into it, Jerry and I looked at the scheduling and the staffing. And we have had times where our 10th ambulance is out. And it's not because it's down for mechanical needs, because we have 4 backup ambulances. It's because of personnel. And so what we have looked at, if you will go to this page with the staffing schedule, I want to walk you through that, okay? A on this is a snapshot of a scheduled week. And you'll see that on December the 8th, we had an open shift. We had 10 open shifts. An open shift is a 12-hour shift, okay? The next day, we had 2, and then we were okay, and then we got 2, and then 5 and 1. The net effect is the 2 lines down below that. When we had 10 people out, and I believe at that time, Jerry, I believe you told me there were 6 people on FMLA during that time. Units down in the morning, we had 3 units down in the morning out of 10.
Wow.
In the afternoon, we had 2 units down. So December 8 was not a good day. And so you can look through the others and look at that. So that's a snapshot of a week. Now what we did under B is we looked at the total impact of staffing shortage for 2018 per the pay cycle. What we looked at there, the bottom line is what you want to look at there, open shifts. Those open shifts, as you see, are bad enough the first 13 cycles. They become worse in the last 13 cycles. We get as high as 41, 44, 48, 23, 58, 44, 35, and 38. Now, those are over a 14-day period, but it's still a lot of times down. So in looking at this, Jerry and myself and his staff looked at this. Our feeling was we needed at least 3 additional staff. So what we did is we looked under C. We said take the total impact that we had under B and assume that we've added 3 full-time employees. And then what do the numbers look like? Well, they improved quite a bit, but there's still a lot of red spaces there. So my recommendation to you is not to add 3 people, but to add 4. And in talking to Jerry about it, rather than having a blend of some intermediate EMTs and some paramedics, what he's requesting is 4 paramedics. I'm in agreement with that. The cost differential is not that much, and every ambulance has to have at least 1 paramedic on it. So if you're going to cover these shortages, best thing to do is add 4 paramedics, and then you don't have a problem of, yeah, I've got the bodies, but I don't have enough paramedics. So that's my recommendation to you on that. The second part of it is that in talking with Jerry and his staff, they're able to fill in some of these with part-time and temporary positions, but some of those are kind of locked in. And what I'm recommending that you do is you give him the maximum flexibility within the same money to deal with sick leave scheduling issues. Because the biggest issue you have, FMLA and different things like that, you can deal with if you have enough people on the payroll because you know they're happening. You're still going to have the problem where somebody gets up at 6 a.m., they're due on a shift at 7 a.m., and they're sick. And you got 1 hour to get somebody in that shift. So you've got to have some people on standby that you can call at a moment's notice, and they've already agreed, yeah, I'll take those shifts. So this would give Jerry the flexibility he needs to fill in those kind of places. But you can't do that with what we have now. We really need to have the 4 additional. And let me say this, we are staffing some of these by bringing people back in, and we're paying overtime. So if you have enough people, we can cut back on the overtime, and that will help cut some of this cost. But this would actually staff them, in my view, at an appropriate level. And Jerry, do you have anything to add about the staffing level?
I think you covered that real good there. We've got in theory, we've got enough personnel, but because of FMLA and people getting sick, and just like what we've had recently, we have a bout with the flu going through a school, and here our people start getting it because they're exposed to everything, then that's what runs us short, and that's what puts us in a bind a lot.
Right. And so what you have to do is you have to plan for that. It's the same thing as running a fire department. Fire departments run on a 24/48 schedule. That's the same schedule we use. And you can't schedule for just enough. You've got to schedule for a little more because people are going to be out. And that's where we've been lacking. So that's the recommendation, and we feel like this will get you up to the strength you need on that.
We lost these positions back in 2008 and 9 when they had a big cutback, when the stock market and everything went south, and we never did get them back. The positions have been there, but they haven't been funded.
So that's the recommendation on the staffing. And again, that was an issue that came about as we studied the first issue. But I felt, once I saw that, I felt like I needed to bring that to your attention. Now, I did mention to you that in the report, it would cost $111,493.33 for these last 4 months of the fiscal year, because we can't get them on until March 1. It would take that long probably take longer than that to recruit them and get them on. But it would take that, but now for a full year, it's $334,480. But I can't stress enough, ambulance service is a matter of life and death.
Absolutely.
So if anything needs to be adequately staffed, it's that.
So we would do 111,000 or whatever it was out of fund balance, and then
Yeah,
we'd put
yeah, if you're in
we'd put the
agreement
rest
with
of it
this-
in the budget next year.
Yeah, if you're in agreement with this, I'll come back to you at the next meeting with a budget amendment for the 111,493. And it would come out of fund balance.
So, I mean, the reason we're having this whole discussion is to, have better coverage and improve response time, and that's what's in
That's
people's
right.
thought process.
That's right.
And
And the
so
problem
on.
does not lay with EMS. It lays with the fact that they got cut back, and we haven't staffed it enough, in my opinion.
It's unbelievable.
Chairman, can I ask Jerry a question? Oh, is that right?
So-
So the new people that we would hire, are those in-house, trained up now that would just go to that position, or would we just bring them from,
And we'd have to hire
recruit
these,
them from wherever?
We'd have to hire these people. We may have some part-time that would want to move up to full-time, and
Okay.
we'd certainly move them up.
But if
Then
they don't, but if
backfill
they
the
don't want
part.
to take full-time, we'd have to go out and recruit, right?
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Are they out there?
Yeah, we get applicants fairly regular.
Oh,
It's
okay.
better than it was for a long time.
Well, that's good.
Good.
All right. Any objections to having consideration on this as a budget amendment at our next meeting? That's the request, right, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, and so that, and to hire these 4 people, but also to give him that flexibility. That's the 2 parts of the recommendation. What I would suggest you do, if y'all are comfortable with the recommendation, is just vote to accept the recommendation, and I'll bring you back the budget amendment.
That's
at
what
the
I'm
next
thinking.
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation. Now, is that also going to take care of the contract?
No, we're going to talk about that one next.
Okay, so
They're
I'm making,
They're 2 separate issues
Got it.
requiring 2 separate votes, in my opinion.
okay, so I'm making a motion to approve the recommendations on the additional personnel for EMS.
I second.
Any public comment on the motion? All in favor, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would like to give you a little brief update. You know, they had a fire in the old French Broad School
Please do.
early
Yeah.
this morning, and some of the fire departments have been down there all day, and I guess they're still there cooling it down. But we've had one person that we think was living there that hadn't been accounted for as of the time this meeting started, which was several hours ago. But anyway, that's the status on that. And the SBI Sheriff's Office and our arson people will be there again in the morning to see what they determine.
Okay. Thank you
Well,
for the
thank you
update. We
very
appreciate
much.
everyone who's been helping out with that all day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Now we come to the second part of this item.
Excuse me.
Oh, I thought I went over that.
Okay. All right, I just want to see if there's anything else to add to it.
I mean, is there a contract attached that,
There is not a contract attached. Michael has done a draft a
Okay.
year ago.
Yeah.
But what we would do, if you approve this, unless you want to take one of these conditions out or add something, then I would ask Michael to take that, rework that contract, and we'll execute it.
So I'll make a motion to approve that with all the stipulations that was presented.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I have a couple of questions and comments.
Sure.
The first is, I've not seen a cost-benefit analysis of this proposal in terms of what moving toward partnering with a private EMS provider looks like for the county. How much is that going to cost us? How much revenue will our fire departments lose as a result of this? Would that result in needing to increase the fire tax rate if we do move toward this direction? Prior to my time, I know I've read thoroughly the study by the Bust Group that does not recommend moving toward a private company. And again, not only do I have the questions about the tax rate and the loss of funds, but there could be some significant implications with federal funding as a result of this. And I think we need to look at that in terms of some of the things that our fire departments and ambulances receive in federal dollars. But the biggest overarching one that is really disconcerting to me, this was not put out for an RFP. We have continued to talk about transparency and accountability. There hasn't been anything out, and I've been told there's no other provider, but we've not been allowed to put that out and give another provider an opportunity. We've asked for Waste Management to put out an RFP. We've had a solar farm proposal, and I think it's only fair and transparent to do the same in this exact same case. If we're lack of perception is reality, and if people think we're not being transparent, we're not. And I take great issue that this has not gone out for an RFP.
All right. Further comments, commissioners? All right. I share the concerns about cost. In terms of what it's going to cost the existing public emergency response services. The report, the report speaks to that directly. We had an outside person look at this. These are thorny local issues, and so that's part of what I really appreciated about having kind of a professional perspective on this from someone who's not from here, doesn't have any interest in it one way or the other, to kind of look at it and give some analysis to it. And honestly, I really came into this discussion with a very really no opinion about what's the right thing to do on this, but I was very persuaded by the independent report on this that it's something that we should consider very carefully before moving ahead with, because this again, kind of math, the reality is there's a certain number of emergency calls that are going to come in every year from people who need service, need assistance. We have staffed our own public personnel and infrastructure to respond to it, and we have our emergency response personnel in the different districts around the county that have decided how to take finite resources and invest it in the best possible way to respond to the needs in the community. So if there's a private party that's taking some of the calls, that's just going to take the revenue away from the public infrastructure investments that we've set up, which means I think that you either have to raise the tax rates to make up the revenue, or the existing public operations will have to cut their personnel or funding for equipment. I think that's just the simple math of the situation, and it doesn't mean that there's not some arguments for this too, but those are pretty big negatives that I think we have to really think about carefully before supporting this. the other main takeaway I had from the report is that if we were going to do this, if we were going to partner with another entity to provide additional emergency response services, that the place it would make sense to do that are any areas where we do have legitimate deficiencies in emergency response times. And we should say, okay, here's the areas that there's a legitimate need for more, more presence. But as I read it, the proposal, while it would allow us to, in certain situations, direct them to provide some presence in areas where we need it, and I think that's good, but as a default position, they could locate their personnel and vehicles wherever they want. That's how I'm reading it. So, and if there were more controls over that, I might be a little bit more comfortable with it. But as I understand it, they're a private entity. They can basically kind of do what they think makes the most sense for them, and and that's fair enough. I mean, they've got to be financially viable too if we're entering into this agreement. But anyway, for those reasons, I have a lot of concerns about it.
Well,
Other comments?
so I just got to,
Yeah.
let me say one thing.
Go ahead.
Chairman, did you not vote against every fire tax increase this past year?
Not every one of them. No, I voted
Pretty
for some.
close, though,
I
wasn't
voted for some of them,
Pretty
but not
close.
the biggest ones.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't
And
either.
honestly, partly it was because we're also looking at this. To me, it's like raising these taxes and then also doing things that take revenue away from them at the same time. I just had a really hard time with that. I think we need to first and foremost decide. Anyway, so I thought it was very mixed signals that we were going through when we were talking about this at the same time as raising
Mr. Chairman.
the taxes.
Yeah, and I don't disagree
Mr.
with
Chairman. He just got through talking about, you read a report, okay? But in that report you read was supposed to have been for the Tollies, but he did a report on basically Buncombe County and the ambulances. Well, you just heard him say, we're 4 people short. Well, when 2 ambulances is down, guess who shows up for 'em? Guess who, when Buncombe County has 2 ambulances down, who shows up for them? They're not going out of an area. They got an ambulance post over here. They take care of the city. They do exactly what they're told to do. But they're just on a different radio system. That's it. They can't see them. They can tell them where to go. But I would say if you asked the Tollies how many calls have they had from Buncombe County to respond in the city. Now, that's from Buncombe County. That's EMS. That's 911. You're going to see a big number. I don't want them hurting Fairview. Now, that's where I live. Half of them sitting back there. But, if they're gone, and the closest ambulance would be one of them. There has been times that I've already heard, you don't see Skyland here, and that's a district that he's in. That's where his ambulances are based out of. And far as you know, they have a nonprofit. It's called a 501c3. It's not all for profit. So, a business that's been around for 30 years, that's not hurting anything today, and it's not going to change. It's not going to cost the county a dime for them to come on. They're going to pay the expense to turn the radio on, and they get, and they've been dispatched because our vehicles are not 4-wheel drive. Now, the fire department's got 4-wheel drives. They got 4-wheel drives, but Buncombe County don't. They got 10 vehicles. It's not 4-wheel drives. When you're sending people to Swannanoa, when you're sending people to Candler, and they're picking people up because our ambulances can't get there, that's what I call life and death. It has nothing to do with private. It has nothing to do with nonprofit. It has nothing to do with anything. It's called saving lives. And if we got 100 ambulances out there, good. But that way, somebody's going to get there quicker. And, if they're coming by, pick me up. If Fairview's coming by, pick me up. If Riceville's coming by, pick me up. We give them districts. I've had one complaint from a gentleman about Riceville because Riceville Road is a small 2-lane road from the fire department. He said it's like, should Chicago. Half the night ambulances are running, and they have to run the sirens, you know, because if they go for emergency, they have to run the sirens. Same thing when they leave down here. We hear them when they leave here. They have to run the sirens. But I can't see any loss. They're not getting anything different, you know. They're getting exactly, you know, they're doing the stuff now under a franchise that's 20 years old or older.
It's old.
It's way old. So we had a group come in here with some buses that wanted to change, and this is how it all got started and how it all got killed. But the main thing is they've been proven. We have good fire departments. They have ambulances. Actually, we've give 2 fire departments ambulance and Buncombe Rescue 1. But we haven't given the Tollies one. They buy theirs and pay taxes on them. They have their own buildings. They have their own staff. They have everything that you need, you know. But that's their business. Fire departments are fire departments. I don't see a fire truck in not one of their sheds. So it's, I'm supportive of what has to be done here. And you know, and what he's brought forward, they're not asking for anything more than what the fire department's got. Just turn the radios on. The same frequency, they don't want any other frequency, and they want to pay for it. But they don't want a dime. And now, how do you operate without getting a dime? And you're telling me that we got to go up on the people's property tax. Well, if they're not in that area, why are you going up on it? You know, they have an area that they're working here. If they're in Skyland, Skyland's big. And Skyland has 3 ambulances, but they run one out of 3. So any benefit to Skyland, that's where they're based out of. And, you know, I've been around, call him a friend, call him whatever you want to call him. But I've seen him at the racetrack racing, get out of a race car, get in a race car with the guy that's dying, get in the truck and work on him till they got to the hospital and they parked his race car. That's what you call try to save a life. And that's where I'm at in this whole project. I will be voting for it, I can tell you that, because the more ambulances we have out there, and he's got them, you know, and they pay for them. Him and his mom and his sister, the company, they pay for theirs. Buncombe County, you're saying we want more tax dollars for somebody to pay for something? No. If you're going to have a business, I had one. You need to be paying for some of your stuff. And then these ambulances, if they're making money for the fire departments, they ought to be able to show that they're generating money. I know that I've talked to one, you get 160 calls, 166, and 106 of them's out of your district and 60's in your district. You got to be figuring out how to make some money.
All right, any other comments
That's
from
why at the end of
commissioners?
the day, seeing the budget numbers and a cost-benefit analysis and implications is incredibly important, because I feel like we're just kind of talking in circles and not really having.
No circles in this.
There's-
Look, man,
we don't
there's
have-
not a circle one in this.
All right,
This
all right,
is
all right.
a simple fact that an ambulance is an ambulance. A person that's been in business for 30 years, that has all the paramedics to be on it, then they got the paramedics.
All right, Commissioner Evers.
And I
I'm
I
not-
want the closest ambulance to come to me.
I hear you, and I don't disagree on that. I want to see the numbers and the implications. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think that's asking for too much in order to do due diligence as a commissioner.
Well, I don't think anybody can give you those numbers until you do it for a year.
That's right.
Because you're asking me to tell you how many calls is he gonna take. I don't know that. I do know that it's Jerry's assessment that the impact will be minimal. But I can't sit here and generate any numbers for you, because it's all dependent on how many calls does he take during a year. That's why I made it for 1 year, is try it for a year, see if there is that impact. If there is a significant impact, then you revisit it.
Yeah, and you know, if you want to use the report to not vote for it, then just don't vote for it. But the report is not an end-all as far as information. The report missed the fact that we need to add personnel. The report missed the fact, let me finish, Commissioner. The report missed the fact, I mean, we had to do a chart to show, how many ambulances were down on certain days, and we had to do that to show that we needed to hire more people, and we're going to hire more people. And if the fire departments need more money, we're gonna do that and take care of that, within reason. But the report was done, just for your benefit, Commissioner, the report was supposed to be done to see if the Tollies could do the job initially.
Well, can I comment on that? Because
You can't want them done.
Okay,
You can't
go
want 'em done.
ahead, because I want to.
You can't want them done, okay. And
different history on
then
this.
there were some issues, and I'm not gonna mention a particular, fire department. There was issues at another fire department that caused a decision to be made to expand that report countywide and see if there was ways to improve countywide. So that's where that report come from, and I know for a fact because I was there, okay? And so, but we've been talking about this thing for a long time, and we can try it, and if it works, great. You gotta perform. If you don't perform, don't happen no more, And you end that discussion, it's over with, and we can move on. And to me, it just, it's a sensible thing to try. I met the Tollies just like I met a lot of people a few days after I was elected. I didn't know you from Adam before, So, this is just about being able to put more people there faster. But I'm not going to get into all that. We've talked that to death. This is a trial for a year, and I'll support it for a year.
Well, I just want to comment. I was an advocate for doing an outside report on this. That is something I advocated for with the county manager, and I was pleasantly surprised when it happened. So to me, the report was kind of exactly what I was hoping it would be, which is an objective third-party assessment of the pros and cons of this idea. And there are some pros to it. There are also definitely some cons. So just, I never really had a question about whether the company was competent at doing their job. So I believe they
I don't
are.
think you did.
So
I
to
don't-
me,
I'm not
that's,
saying you
this
did,
report, looking at, a complex issue, to me, it's very valuable. And so I just wanted to share that, because to me, just having them validate their credentials was not the purpose of having that study done. Anybody hadn't spoken on this yet?
Go ahead.
There you go.
You go.
Well, this has been going on 2 years. And Commissioner Edwards, this is zero cost to the county. There's no cost at all to the county of putting this on. They're going to pay for their own. I didn't think this was going to turn into an argument. I thought we all should look at this like we do affordable housing. We need to make sure people get medical attention quick as they can. They've been using him for 2 years anyway. They've been using him. He gets calls, and I'm not on no side here. I am just sitting here. If we've got a dispatcher from down there, he is called every day because wants to know if they've got an ambulance available. He's not going to be chasing wrecks. He's going to have a station that he's going to be in. If Fairview or Inca has an ambulance out, from what I understand, he's going to back them up. Once they come back, he's gone. He don't get the next one in line. It ain't like waiting in line.
I don't think that's in the proposal as it's
Well,
crafted currently.
the intent of number 3 is that we can assign him to location.
But when we haven't assigned him, he can go wherever he wants. That's his business.
But they got GPSs on them that tells what's a
He can
close.
position his vehicles anywhere in the county that he wants.
Well,
At least I don't read any
the
limitations.
way
on it.
I view
Do you
this
really think he's gonna
is
do
that
It's
if-
his
if we-
business. Why
if-
would he not?
The way I see this is, and my discussions with him was, if we start seeing an impact on a particular fire department because he's there, basically competing with them, then I think we can say you need to move from there.
And that's when I'll step up. I don't want it hurting my fire departments. I want it to be a backup's what I'm trying to say, which he has been for 2 years while I've been a commissioner.
If we could build that into the plan, I'd probably be very open to it. But
Well,
right now, it's just.
I
sort
guess
of,
I'm viewing that, and number 3 is doing that.
That's
If you want to
basically
change
what
the
you're doing.
language, I'm fine with that. But that was the intent of it.
But I mean,
Boss, you can cancel it anytime.
Fairview has their bases, and he has one base. I don't know what the name. Mr. Tolley, would you mind coming up, please? What is you are based through the county in the city, and you furnish a ambulance, and it's stationed where at over here in
Off
town?
East Chestnut Street downtown. Let me tell you the process, how this happens. First thing in the morning, 7 a.m., we have a crew come on, or that relieves the crew at night. They contact the 911 center. The 911 center directs them to either come downtown, which is 99% of the time, or move to a location north, south, east, or west where they're down on ambulances until one comes into the area that's supposed to be there. When that unit, I'll use Fairview for an example. Let's say Fairview Fire Department's out on an ambulance call. We know they have 3 ambulances. I don't know how many's in service, but the dispatcher does. Fairview has a bad wreck. He uses all of his ambulances. Chief Jones calls and says, I need another truck to respond to the call. The next truck to go is your truck, Buncombe County, because it's stationed at Reynolds. What would happen then is we would move into the Reynolds area, not the Fairview area. It would be a staging area. And they're already pre-designated staging areas throughout Buncombe County that was established by Mr. Vihon. Those staging areas were designed so that we could have a quicker response into an area where ambulances are not, or they're busy, or they're on a call, or whatever you want to call it. That's how that works. Our station downtown is primarily a hub downtown. Now, our station in the south, we call it, is off of Long Shoals Road. It's in the Skyland Fire District. Skyland has 1 ambulance that they operate 24 hours a day. Very regularly, Skyland is on calls and need help. Very regularly. The dispatcher knows that. After midnight, our ambulance is stationed downtown until either 9 o'clock through the week or midnight on weekends. After midnight, our ambulance comes back to our station in the south. Now that leaves that dispatcher the option of letting them stay in the south station, or if it's really busy downtown or in a certain area, the dispatcher can elect to keep that truck downtown because he might need it. This is 100% driven by the 911 center. And I know what you're saying, Brownie. We're a private organization, 501c3. We can go anywhere we want to, but we participate with the system in the county. We follow the rules of the system in the county. I would have there's no reason for me to go station an ambulance in Fairview's fire district because they're already there. There's no reason to do that.
Well, let me ask you, and I appreciate this, and it's the details of this that I think really matter. And if we can get some more of the kind of things you're describing kind of built into an agreement, I really am open to it. But but let me just ask you this, just to kind of play devil's advocate for a second. So let's say Fairview for a minute. So let's say you guys are experiencing what you're doing. You see where a lot of the calls for service are. Why might it not be advantageous to, if someone wanted to? And again, I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's our job to kind of think about what if. So for an operator to not position a vehicle between, say for example, Fairview Fire District and an area that generates a lot of calls, because then your vehicle would be the closest. And under our agreement, I think you'd be called first.
I'll tell you why,
Okay.
Brownie.
Sure.
Because I respect every fire department in Buncombe County. I'm on the board of a fire department in Buncombe County. I have been a member of a fire department in Buncombe County for 36 years. I know this system up one side and down the other. We all have a mutual respect for each other, and I would not do that to a fire department in Buncombe County. And I think they know that.
Well, I appreciate that. But it's also our job to make sure we get that stuff captured right in the policies.
Yeah, and you
because
can- we can
that's
put
just, that's
that
our
in
job.
the-
That's just the right thing to
Put
do.
that into franchise.
And to clarify, this is not a contract. What we have been doing is outside of the franchise ordinance. We're merely trying to come within the legalities of the
Turn
ordinance
the radios on.
to continue doing what we're doing.
And that's one of the reasons that sold me on it is, when I realized we have a convalescent franchise. So we're actually using him beyond the franchise now.
That's right.
So regardless of what we do as far as letting him do more things, if we're going to continue to use him like we do, we need to amend that franchise anyway, because we're using him more than it calls for. Convalescent is non-emergency medical transport.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Tolley or while we're?
I have a question for staff, and Mr. Tully and folks from Medic, I appreciate what you do for our community, and it does seem like there can be a way forward with this, and I do think it's just very important that we're consistent with our process. So my question to staff is, why would we not do an RFP in a scenario like this where we've identified that we need to outsource a service that the county's providing but can't provide total coverage on? So we identify we need extra help, and we would typically do an RFP. Why would we not do that here?
There's two reasons for that. Number one, there are no other identified ambulance services in Buncombe County. When you looked at the waste collection systems, you've got far more people who are already in the system. The second reason is he's already here. He's already doing a lot of this. So really what we're doing is formalizing the relationship to some degree you already have. And that's why my guess is if you did an RFP, the only person that would respond would be him.
Yeah,
That might well be true.
that
but
is true.
Well, I don't think it might well be true, but in my view, that would be a good step forward.
No,
That would get-
that's kicking the can down the road is what that's doing. I hate to use that silly thing, but that's exactly what we're doing.
Actually, I think it's consistent with.
Just a minute.
I think it's consistent with the commitment to transparency and clear process that we're trying to implement at every level of what we're doing. And I think it's a standard we would apply. I hope it's a standard we apply anytime we're outsourcing a service. It would not be a critique of Medic. It would be about the county using appropriate processes before we enter into agreements or contracts where there's a potential loss of revenue to the county as a result, or where the county's paying out for services. So that's where
We're not paying anything.
there's a projected revenue loss to the system, which we are responsible for.
Who's-
So that's where I'm.
Who's projected a revenue loss? Give me, do the math, show me the math.
That's what I've asked for.
Well, it's not, okay.
I've asked for it.
We're only gonna try it for a year, and here's the challenge about this, is that I'm a commissioner, you know what? I don't know nothing about what you do. I don't know nothing about what you
We'll
do.
be here all
I
night.
love it. I respect it. I respect all these guys. I don't know nothing about what y'all do. All this is for is to try, the cost is zero, is to try this for a year. And actually, I think it's written to where, we don't have to go a year, do we?
Well, if he doesn't meet all the conditions,
Yeah, if he doesn't meet the conditions, but we try that for a year. And if we, and the other thing is that when I call an ambulance, I'm not looking for the low-cost provider. No. I'm not. I'm not looking for the lowest cost provider. I'm looking for I want 15 of them showing up at my house,
Yeah, but the
and-
concern is that if we introduce a privatized system and it reduces revenues to the districts by 10%, then now our districts have 10% less revenue, means less people, less equipment to invest in.
And so we're not gonna do it.
that is what.
I don't, yeah, but you're reading that.
This, I know from these
How
people
how much did we pay those guys? And I'm not saying they don't know
spent his
what they're
lifetime. He's a professional,
I know.
independent.
And I'm not throwing off on that.
So unless you have
Brownie,
some
I talked to
reason-
the gentleman the next day after the meeting. He said he worked at a fire department that had ambulances, worst thing he'd ever done.
Well, all I'm saying
there
is
we
we
go.
can try it and see if it works. So.
Well, here's what I'd like to suggest. We've all had a chance to talk. I want to hear from other members of the public that anybody wants to speak to this.
That'd be
we'll
awesome.
Take public comment. We can vote on this tonight. It will require, we do need to actually look at the franchise agreement reform. So whatever we do tonight, there'll be some follow up to it. But let's take some more public comments and then decide what we're going to do tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Commissioner, we have been here for 30 years. My husband and I started this business. As our children got older, we brought them into the business. He worked for Buncombe County, retired after 30 years. He worked for the Sheriff's Department first, and then for Buncombe County EMS. Now, we talked about bringing in other people just to see if somebody else might want to do this job. There was another company brought in. Their name was Medline. They came in here from who knows where, had 3 ambulances, rented a house over in Kenworth, rented their ambulances. We also found out that they were staffing people that were not even certified. This is not an easy job to do. It's not an easy business to start. We started it because I was part of the fire department. I have been a member of Skyland Fire Department for years. Was assistant training officer at one time. And when my husband retired, we worked together and started this ambulance service. It is not an easy job. And you could put out all the solicitations you wanted to, but it doesn't mean you're going to get qualified people. And I'm not saying that but I know it. I've seen 2, 3 ambulance services go out because they were not certified. But you know what? They didn't have a franchise either. And right now we're working without one. We just want to do the right thing and get our franchise straight. We have no problem working just like we are. But if anything happened to one of you, you might get lucky and get 2 or 3 ambulances at the same time. We delivered a baby today. Not in our district, in another one. And thank God the little boy's in the hospital tonight doing good. But that's all here and there. We're talking about a business of 30 years, not 5, not 10, 30. Sometimes working on no money at all. Sometimes working with a lot. If you have a business, then you know how that works. But you struggle and you keep on going. And that's what we've done. We've been here now, Robert said 2 years. We've been here 3 trying to get this straightened out. We started way back with Wanda Green. We submitted everything we had.
Your time's up.
Everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I actually wanted to speak as a member of staff, not as a public, but I want to say if you did put out an RFP, that actually might be a two-edged sword. You have AMR and large national companies that would come in and make you a proposal.
That's
There are
exactly
other
right.
providers. Just because we don't have an EMS provider at Buncombe County doesn't mean that you can't do it. I do think it's appropriate, but I actually think the more appropriate step is if we staffed everything like we needed to, we wouldn't need the emergency help that we get. We rely on them. They have bailed us out many times. There are other aspects of the franchise agreement we have with them that they have not kept up time and time again that I've caught them on personally. But that's neither here nor there. I'm glad we have them. I'm glad they help us out. But just give you a little bit more history. Jerry went to those volunteer fire departments and had them increase their level of service to paramedic to try to offset some of that cost to the county for increasing ambulances on us, hiring more staff, etc. And all of them did it. They took the burden on themselves. They've helped us out. And now, yes, the more system, the more ambulances we put in the system, it's gonna take revenue. You ask how much, they said they can tell you how many calls they make a year, multiply that by $800. Or 600 for some departments, only get about 600 return on a paying trip. But that's where the real cost is, and it's probably not that much. 1,500 transports a year. How many y'all doing right now?
Well, we'd have to separate out for the county. We don't know.
That's what I meant for the county. I think when I ran the numbers, it was 1,500 calls, so let's say 700 transports. Multiply that by 600, that gives you the amount of money that's gonna come out of somebody else's revenue.
Of the ones that pay.
That's why I'm
Right.
saying 600.
Yeah, they don't pay.
You bill $800 for an ambulance call. And generally your return on it is 600. We're at 653 or something right now. I don't know, Scott, what are y'all getting on a? You average that out. When I say $650, that's what you get on paid jobs.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Yelton?
You don't have to be so excited, Brownie, when you tell me to come up. I've heard this argument 2 years ago, folks. Very same thing that was said tonight. And I got a very simple solution. Everybody talks about transparency. When I walked into this room tonight, I'd already been told who the new county manager was going to be. That vote should have been more transparent than it was here tonight. So let's don't even talk about transparency. Number two, you can put out a request for proposals. You do not, by state law, have to take the lowest bid. If you can justify the winner of the bid as the best provider of the service. So much for your cost analysis. Now, if they're able to provide this backup without buying new ambulances and new staff, and they are filling in for Buncombe County, that might say that they're better at operating than the county, which is what has happened in the garbage business. See, there's two things about me. I got a degree in sanitary engineering. That's why I can deal with politics. And I also know trash, which is why I can deal with politics. And one of the things you find that when you start bidding for trash service, the cost of providing it normally goes down because they are competing with the government. And for some weird reason, I see Mission Hospital running ambulances in Yancey County, in Madison County. I see helicopters flying in to Irwin, Tennessee, taking people to the hospital in Johnson City. I don't see county ambulances in Johnson City, or in Yancey, or Madison. So what you do is you let this company operate by the same requirements as our ambulance service for the next year. And then you sit down and analyze the costs right there. Because they may be operating better. Nothing against Jerry, but they may be operating better than the county. Because I've always found the county and the government's not always the best. And we can justify they're not asking for a dime. They're not asking for $2.5 million to build affordable housing and then get another loan 25 years later to pay off the balance. They're doing it on their own with no investment from the county. And it's all hyperbole about what it's doing in terms of tax dollars. That's more coming from the pocket of us people locally.
All right, anybody else? Okay. Commission,
I make a motion to approve the recommendation made by the county manager. And I assume after that they would get the contract straight because the contract's not straight now.
And we'll bring it to you.
And you'd bring that back to us.
All right, so we can vote on this tonight. There will be, the details of the contract to
Right.
review, since
Right.
it's not the final word on it,
Contract's
but,
got to come back.
Any other comments before we vote? Is there a second? I'm sorry, was there a second?
Wait a minute, what are we voting now?
I think,
To put it off?
No,
Okay.
no, we're voting on the recommendations, which is to extend a contract to Medic, okay? But the contract just has to be written to reflect what was read by the county manager.
Right, and it'll be for 1 year.
Yes, and it'll be for,
And it'll be an amendment or in lieu of the current convalescent franchise.
Yes.
It will be a full ambulance contract.
Which
we'll
is-
have to vote on the contract too.
Yeah, we'll
And,
bring that
and again,
back
I'll
to
just
you.
say, like, depending on the details of that contract, I'll bring an open mind to it, but, the details matter a lot. There's a motion in favor.
Second.
There's a second. Further discussion. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say aye. Aye. All right, it passes 4-3. All right. Next up, we've got several different budget amendments. And Jennifer Chilton is going to present these items.
I thought we was done.
No, you ain't done. No.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I appreciate
Good
you
evening.
hanging in there for the long evening to then listen to 13 budget amendment requests.
Hey, we're losing.
So, as we have in our recent meetings, I will plan to review them in thorough. And then if you want to then go back and vote on them, is that how
there's-
you want to do that?
Well, there's so many of them. I've been thinking about this and I'm open to suggestions, but I thought maybe just briefly say a few words about each one. Let's vote and move on to the next one and just work our way through it, if that's okay with you.
I can do that. So beginning with budget amendments 1 and 2, as they are related. On January 2nd, you all as a board approved the establishment of the special reappraisal, the tax reappraisal fund, in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 153A-150. The First Amendment appropriates fund balance in the amount of $726,666, which is years 1 and 2 of the tax reappraisal funding requirement. The third year will be planned to be brought to you in fiscal year 2020 as a request to transfer that third dollar amount to the tax reappraisal fund. So appropriating the fund balance in the general fund. And then number 2 is establishes the transfer and then the receipt of those dollars into the newly established tax reappraisal fund, which is technically a special revenue fund.
Okay. Okay. Here's my concern. I do want to take public comment on this, but I don't want to do it 10 times. So I'm kind of, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to ask for public comment on any of these proposed budget amendments. So if you have any comments on any of these proposed budget amendments, now is the time to let us know. Because this is, we're going to go through these and we're going to vote on them, but we're not going to do that 10 times in a row. Mr. Yelton.
Everybody else?
I'll be quick. Okay. That was a little bit nicer too, Brownie. All I got to say about budgets is I'm looking for this board to establish a budget. And I think if you'll follow everything I've said tonight, once you establish that budget, you must live within it. Because that's what I have to do as a citizen. I can find the best deal on a nice new Cadillac out there. I mean, I can get it for 30% of what it normally costs, but I can't put it in if it doesn't fit my budget. And I think that that's what you need to consider. You establish the budget, because I know just like conservation easements, there used to be a set amount of money for that. You set that money aside. When it's gone, it's gone. You set money aside for affordable housing. When it's gone, it's gone. You set money aside for every item, because you have a little emergency fund in that budget. And any manager does that because when it's gone, it's gone. And that's going to take more than a 4-3 vote for the next 12 months or 24 months. And I'm going to be looking for less 4-3 votes. Because, folks, you got to start considering us that pay the bill. Because I can tell you what, you'll end up like California. You know where they're at? They can't even pay their retirements. You're headed for that direction if you don't live within your means and your budget. So that's my comment on each of these budget items. And I encourage you to establish a budget for next year. And Al, you have an excellent background for that, and you're going to have to make some decisions you don't like. Because you're going to have to say no to some projects that you'd like to do. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So I think we've got an overview of 1 and 2. Do we need separate motions on 1 and 2, or can they be combined? It would be 1. Let's just, I'm sorry, you said 1's okay? All right. Is there a motion to approve the budget amendments identified as number 1 and 2 in the staff budget amendment summary document?
So moved.
Yeah.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So moving on with number 3, this is a budget amendment for the general fund. Annually, the Parks, Greenways, and Recreation Department hosts the Lake Julian's Festival of Lights. The department is coming with a request to be able to receive and budget the additional revenue. So it's revenue that is in excess of their expenditures for the Festival of Lights. To be able to reinvest the $12,370 back into the Festival of Lights for next fiscal year. So they're coming forward to ask to be able to budget that net increase in additional revenue.
Is there a motion to approve budget amendment item number 3 related to the Festival of Lights?
Yeah, I have a comment and a motion. Okay. The comment is I have received, and this is for the board. I don't really know how we do this, but I have received comments from the community that they that if we invest in new lights, that they would like to see some that were for the traditional holiday, and such as Christmas and Hanukkah, and some things that would be kind of would remind them of that. Could be very simple. It doesn't have to be way out there, but I've heard that within the community. I think we have the ability to do that. And there's some in there that are pretty close, but they'd like to see, a little bit more of that. So wherever that needs to go, I've been wanting to say that and didn't. This was the perfect time to do it. So
I know that Josh O'Connor did have to leave a little early, so I'll be more than happy to take that information
yeah, I'll get
back
that
to
back to
him.
him.
Okay. So that was the comment, and then did you make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve.
Approve number 3. Okay. There's a
Gladly.
motion and second to approve number 3. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right. So amendments number 4 and 5 are related. The first one is the general fund, and then the need to then transfer the requested dollars from the general fund to the capital fund. We're coming to you again related to the Lake Julian Marina dock replacement. We have identified to be able to pay the contract in full. The sales tax equivalent is $14,000. So the Parks, Greenways, and Recreation Department has identified $14,000 to be able to move from their departmental cost center to be paired in the capital fund so that we can pay that contract that includes the sales tax, with the awareness that finance on an annual basis files the appropriate paperwork that we're then able to receive those dollars back. But we do need to pay that on the front end as part of the contract expense.
Okay. So this is for items 4 and 5.
It is.
Is there a motion to approve items 4 and 5 related to the the Lake Julian dock replacement project.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So items 6 and 7 are related, but they are separate. On the, trying to remember what date, at the January 15th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting, you all reviewed and heard from the Planning Department related to conservation easements, one for Moose Wilshire Stream Restoration, and then one for Wells King Bottomlands Conservation Easements. These are budget amendments for us to be able to move forward with establishing those conservation easements. The first one is $13,200 for Moose Wilshire, and the second one is for $50,000 for Wells King Bottomlands Conservation Easement.
All right, these are both projects that the commission approved at our last meeting.
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to approve budget items 6 and 7?
Great.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 8.
So number 8 is a general fund request. This is related to an item that our Identification Bureau Director Pat Freeman had been in conversation with Mr. Wood around. There is a request to engage in a contract for service to be able to scan all of the historical documents for the City County Bureau of Identification. There are currently 21 filing cabinets of historical gun permit applications. There is a requirement for records retention related to those, and certainly the ability to back scan those historical records would be not only more efficient for the retrieval, but obviously would free up physical space. So we're requesting to be able to use $27,000 of budgetary contingency to transfer, or to be able to provide that to IT on behalf of the Identification Bureau to go ahead and begin that project.
They are pretty much out of space over there, and this would free that up. You can imagine 21 cabinets. It's each really good sized room.
Okay.
I move that we approve it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So budget amendment number 3 is within the grants fund. This is a continuation grant. We've received notification from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety for a funding amount for fiscal year 2019 for $900,000. The narrative does reflect what the Methodist Home for Children grant addresses. So that's to be able to budget the anticipated funding from the grant and to continue the services that are provided through the Methodist Home.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment related to the $900,000 for the grant for the Methodist Home for Children. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The 4 remaining are related to a request to either close out a grant project or a capital project. I'll begin with budget amendment number 10. That is within the grant projects fund. We had received $50,000 for grant funding for the Innovation Fund grant, and the grant funding has been expended and is ready to close. And those were related to some services that were provided through the pre-trial.
And Jennifer, if I could just mention one thing. I know everybody's tired. It's been a long day. We are going through all of these projects in our capital projects fund, and those that have been finished, if there's a remainder amount in there, we're closing them out and moving that remainder down to a contingency line item. So really just cleaning that up. And at your next meeting, you're going to get a finance report from Don Warren. And so, and then periodically, you'll get a report where we'll go in depth on all of those capital projects. I know that's one thing y'all wanted to see. But we want to clean up as many of those as we can and close them out. And that's one of them there.
All right. I move to approve the item number 10, the grant closure on the MacArthur grant funding of $50,000.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Number 11 is additionally a grants project fund. We are requesting closure for grant revenue that was received for Envirothon and Camp Wild 2016. That was for educational programming through soil conservation, and that grant has been expended.
All right. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Number 12, Capital Projects Fund. A request to close the project for Lake Julian Park expansion. That project has been complete, and it yielded a 77-cent savings. So when I was looking to when it was returned no material savings, it was 77 cents for that project.
Okay. All right. Move to approve budget item number 12.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you. Number 12, again, a capital project related to the Irwin Pool resurfacing. That has been completed, and that balance was $350. So that will return to a contingency account that we can later repurpose.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. On board appointments.
I will recommend Paul Garber to the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioners, we do still have a couple of boards that need a commissioner to serve on them. I know it's late. We don't have to do this tonight, but I just want to ask the commissioners to continue to look at, we've got Crime Stoppers, Buncombe County Child Protection Team and Child Fatality Prevention Team, and Land of Sky Regional Council. So,
I could just, one point of clarification, there's no requirement for a commissioner to serve on the child protection team.
there's not.
There's not, no. It's possible for someone to, but there's no requirement.
So but we need to appoint someone?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I was appointed and got cycled off, and someone can be appointed if they
Okay.
are interested
Awesome.
in serving.
Great. All right,
There's no
so-
requirement.
There's no requirement.
Okay, great. So think about that. If anybody's interested, let us know, but that's great to know. We don't have to do that. Anybody on the other two? Again, we don't have to do this tonight, but I just want to keep bringing it up till eventually we have to fill these. So, all right.
I've got some issues about the board.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So we did add those dates and times on there that they meet as requested by Commissioner Belcher.
Yes.
If y'all see that these times and dates, because we have some information that is not updated, please let us know if you're on these commissions, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are now to public comment. I don't have
Take
to.
a 10-minute break.
No.
I just
You
stay here till 9:30.
Don Yelton, Jupiter, North Carolina. Well, you all can blame this public comment on somebody sitting up there that threatened to throw me out tonight because I was just trying to tell you that your program wasn't being televised. It wasn't me abusing public comment. Now, you folks know I have a little fun with you all. And the only way that you can put up with this stuff is to have a little fun with it. And I think that goes two ways. And I think sometimes I see much division on that board as I see in the United States. And we all know how bad that is. And I suggest that you get a little bit of humor and you learn to give and take. Because, Al, you know I've punched you and you've punched me back. Right. But you know I'm going to be punching you as long as you're up there. And you're either going to enjoy it or you're going to hate me. And you know I don't care if you hate me. You could do that. So I'm just telling you, Brownie, keep that smile on your face And when I tell you you're not being televised, I'm not trying to interrupt the decorum in here, but sometimes the decorum in here stinks because you could cut it with a knife. And so there's 1:38 left, so you get out a little bit early. I still got 1:33 to talk, but I'm not going to. Y'all have a good evening. Get home and eat you something because you're probably hungry because you all probably eat all your candy up there. If you're not, I'm going to come get some of it. Have a good one.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Do we have a closed session?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So I need a motion and a vote for a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney retained by the public body to preserve attorney-client privilege.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Okay. If I unplug this, is it gonna go away?
No, we coming to your house. We coming to your house.
Okay, well, get me something, Joe.
I can't believe she waited this long.
No, she just leaving church.
Oh, okay.
You tell her to put the steak on? No, we're done. She just leaving church.
Yeah, but he knows he doesn't pay for it.